Hey, what is up, everyone? Today we got a pretty unique story. It's narrated by Frederick Surrey. Get cozy and watch till the end, guys.
In the grim darkness of the far future, where there is only war, faith becomes more than belief. It transforms into a weapon sharper than any blade, more devastating than any artillery barrage. Among the countless trillions who serve the Imperium of mankind, none embody this truth more completely than the Adepta Sororitas, the Sisters of Battle. They are the Emperor's daughters, clad in ceramite armor and wreathed in holy fire, their voices raised in hymns of devotion as they bring righteous destruction to the enemies of humanity. These are not merely soldiers, they are warrior saints, each one trained from childhood to see death in the Emperor's service as the highest calling any mortal can achieve. Where Space Marines are the Emperor's angels of death, genetically enhanced beyond human limits, the Sisters of Battle remain defiantly, powerfully human. Their strength comes not from genetic manipulation or cybernetic enhancement, but from faith so pure and absolute that it bends reality itself. On battlefields across the galaxy, witnesses report miracles, impossible feats of endurance and accuracy that defy all rational explanation. Bolter shells that should miss find their marks. Armor that should fail turns aside, killing blows. Sisters who should die rise again, their wounds closing through sheer force of will and divine intervention. To understand the Sisters of Battle, we must understand that they represent something unique in the Imperium's vast military machine. They are the only sanctioned army of the ecclesiarchy, the sprawling religious institution that maintains the imperial cult across a million worlds. This arrangement came about through a technicality in imperial law, a loophole carved from tragedy and sealed in blood. The decree passive, issued after one of the Imperium's darkest periods, forbade the ecclesiarchy from maintaining men under arms. But the decree said nothing about women. From this legal distinction arose an army of faithful warriors who would become legend. Their armor gleams with sacred oils and blessed inscriptions. Every bolt shell they fire has been consecrated in week-long rituals. Their weapons bear verses from the Fede Imperialis, the battle hymn of the Adepta Sororitas, inscribed on every tooth of every chainsword, every link of every chain. When they march to war, their boots strike the ground in perfect unison, and their voices lift in songs of faith that echo across battlefields. To their allies, and they bring hope and inspiration. To their enemies, they bring absolute annihilation, delivered with hymns on their lips and prayers in their hearts. The galaxy knows them by many names: the Sisterhood, the Daughters of the Emperor, the Orders Militant. But to those who have seen them in battle, who have watched them stride through enemy fire with their flamers blazing and their faith unshakable, they are simply the Sisters of Battle, the most zealous and devoted warriors the Imperium has ever known. The Age of Apostasy, birth through blood and betrayal. The story of the Adepta Sororitas begins not in glory, but in one of the Imperium's darkest chapters. The 36th Millennium brought with it a period known to history as the Age of Apostasy, a time when corruption and tyranny seized the very heart of the Imperium's government. And at the center of this darkness stood one man, Goja Vandyra, whose ambition and madness would nearly tear the Imperium apart, and whose actions would inadvertently create the force that would become the Sisters of Battle. Vandyra rose to power through cunning and ruthlessness, eventually claiming not one, but two of the most powerful positions in the Imperium. He held the title of both Ecclesiarch, Supreme Leader of the Adeptus Ministorum, and High Lord of the Administratum, giving him control over both the spiritual and bureaucratic machinery of the Imperium. This consolidation of power violated every principle of the checks and balances that had been established after the Horus Heresy. But Vandyre was clever, and he was patient, and by the time anyone realized the danger, it was too late. His reign became known as the Reign of Blood, and the name was grimly appropriate. Vandyre ruled through terror and paranoia, seeing conspirators and traitors in every shadow. He ordered purges that claimed billions of lives. Entire worlds were put to the torch for suspected disloyalty. The Fraterist Templar, his personal army of fanatical warriors, enforced his will with brutal efficiency. Imperial governors who questioned his authority were publicly executed. Cardinals who spoke against his decrees simply disappeared. The Imperium, already a cruel and unforgiving empire, became a nightmare of oppression and bloodshed. But Vandiah knew that power required more than fear. It required loyalty, absolute and unquestioning. And so, he searched the Imperium for warriors who could serve as his personal bodyguard, an elite force whose devotion would be beyond question. As his search led him to a backwater world called Sanlior, a planet that had remained largely isolated from the greater Imperium for centuries. On Sanlior existed a unique warrior cult, an all-female order dedicated to the worship of the Emperor and the perfection of martial arts. They called themselves the Daughters of the Emperor, and they lived lives of strict discipline and unwavering faith. From childhood, they trained in combat, studied the imperial creed, and prepared themselves to serve humanity's divine ruler in whatever capacity he might require. They were formidable fighters, skilled in both ranged and close combat, and their devotion to the Emperor was absolute. When Vandiah arrived on Sanlior, he recognized immediately that he had found exactly what he needed. But the Daughters of the Emperor would not simply follow any man who claimed authority. They would need to be convinced that Vandiah truly represented the Emperor's will. So Vandiah staged a deception, a theatrical demonstration designed to awe these faithful warriors into submission. He allowed one of the daughters to fire upon him with a pistol at point-blank range. The weapon discharged, the bullet flew true, but at the last moment, Vandiah's Rosarius, a sophisticated force field generator worn as a religious icon, activated. The bullet stopped mere millimeters from his flesh, falling harmlessly to the ground. To the watching daughters, raised in a culture of faith and devotion, this appeared to be a miracle, divine proof that Vandiah was indeed blessed by the Emperor, perhaps even his chosen representative on Terra. Unconvinced by this false miracle, the Daughters of the Emperor swore themselves to Vandiah's service. He renamed them the Brides of the Emperor, and they became his most trusted bodyguards. His personal army, the shield that protected him from the growing coalition of forces that sought to end his tyrannical reign. They followed him with absolute loyalty, believing they served the Emperor's chosen, never questioning the increasingly brutal orders they carried out in his name. The brides were fearsome in battle, their skill and devotion making them nearly unbeatable. They crushed rebellion after rebellion, their faith seeming to protect them from harm. Where the Fraterist Templar relied on numbers and brutality, the brides fought with precision and skill, their every action a prayer made manifest through violence. They became legends, whispered about in fearful tones across the Imperium. But even as Vandiah's power seemed absolute, forces were moving against him. A coalition of imperial authorities, later known as the Confederation of Light, began to gather strength. The Space Marines, the Adeptus Mechanicus, and elements of the imperial military united in their determination to end Vandiah's reign. But they faced a seemingly insurmountable problem. The Brides of the Emperor stood between them and their target, and no force seemed capable of breaking through their defense. It was the Adeptus Custodes, the Emperor's own Praetorian Guard, who found the solution. These golden warriors, who had stood watch over the Emperor's throne room for 10,000 years, recognized that the brides were not evil. They were deceived, their faith exploited by a madman. As the Custodes approached the brides, attempting to convince them of Vandiah's treachery, but the brides would not listen. Their faith in Vandiah, born from what they believed was a miracle, could not be shaken by words alone. So the Custodes took an unprecedented step. They brought the leader of the brides, a warrior named Alicia Dominica, and 5 of her chosen companions deep into the imperial palace, to the very heart of the Imperium. They walked corridors that had not been tread by outsiders in millennia, passing through chambers filled with wonders and horrors beyond description. And finally, they stood before the golden throne itself, in the presence of the Emperor of mankind. What happened in that throne room remains one of the Imperium's most closely guarded secrets. Alicia Dominica and her companions were sworn to secrecy, all forbidden from ever revealing what they witnessed, what they heard, what they felt in the presence of humanity's immortal guardian. But whatever transpired in those moments changed everything. When Dominica emerged from the throne room, her eyes held a terrible new understanding. She returned to Vandira's palace, her 5 companions at her side. The brides welcomed them back, unaware of what was coming. Alicia Dominica walked into Vandira's audience chamber, where the High Lord sat upon his throne of power, surrounded by his loyal guards. She paused before him, and in that moment, the chamber fell silent. Then, in a voice that carried across the vast hall, Alicia Dominica condemned Goja Vandira for his crimes against the Imperium and the Emperor. She listed his atrocities, his betrayals, his perversion of the Emperor's will. Vandira tried to speak, tried to protest, but his words died as Dominica drew her power sword. With a single stroke, she removed his head from his shoulders. The rain of blood ended in that instant, the tyrant's life snuffed out by the very bodyguard he had trusted most. The brides, witnessing their leader's actions and hearing her condemnation, understood. They had been deceived, their faith exploited, their devotion turned toward evil. But that devotion itself had been pure, and now it could be redirected toward its rightful purpose. In the aftermath of Vandira's death, the Imperium underwent massive reforms. The decree passive was issued, forbidding the ecclesiarchy from ever again maintaining men under arms. The Frateres Templar were disbanded. The Adeptus Ministerum's power was curtailed, checked by new laws and oversight. But what to do with the brides of the Emperor? They had proven their worth in battle, their skill undeniable. Their faith, though it had been misdirected, was genuine and powerful. And they were women, which meant they fell outside the restrictions of the decree passive. So a decision was made. The brides would be reformed and reorganized. Their original name of Daughters of the Emperor restored. They would become the Orders Militant of the Adepta Sororitas, the military arm of the ecclesiarchy, the sword and shield of the imperial faith. Alicia Dominica became the first abbess of the Adepta Sororitas, tasked with leading this new organization. The original daughters were divided between 2 great strongholds, the Convent Prioris on Terra and the Convent Sanctorum on the world of Ophelia 7. From these 2 convents, the Orders Militant would spread across the galaxy, bringing the Emperor's light to the darkest corners of space. The age of apostasy ended, but its legacy lived on in the Adepta Sororitas. They were born from betrayal and blood, their foundation laid in the darkest period of imperial history. But from that darkness, they emerged as something glorious, a force of pure faith and absolute devotion. They would never again be deceived. They would never again serve tyrants. They would serve only the Emperor, and in his name, they would bring his wrath to all who opposed his will. The 6 major orders, pillars of faith. From the original daughters of the Emperor, 6 great orders militant emerged, each founded by one of the companions who had stood before the Golden Throne with Alicia Dominica. These 6 women, later canonized as saints, yet each brought their own character and philosophy to the orders they founded. Over the millennia, these orders have developed distinct combat doctrines, traditions, and approaches to warfare, yet all share the same core of absolute faith and devotion to the Emperor. The Order of the Ebon Chalice stands as the oldest and most orthodox of all the orders militant. Founded by Alicia Dominica herself, it traces its lineage directly back to the original Daughters of the Emperor. Where other orders have evolved and adapted over the centuries, the Ebon Chalice has remained steadfast in its adherence to the original traditions and doctrines. Their armor is black as night, their cloaks white with red linings, the same colors worn by the Daughters of the Emperor 4,000 years ago. The symbol of the order is a flaming chalice filled with skulls, on a representation of the terrible knowledge that Alicia Dominica received when she stood before the Emperor. Few outside the highest ranks of the sisterhood know the true significance of this symbol, but it serves as a constant reminder that some truths are too dangerous for mortal minds to comprehend, that faith sometimes requires accepting mysteries that cannot be fully understood. The Sisters of the Ebon Chalice view themselves as the standard by which all other orders are measured. They are the keepers of tradition, the guardians of orthodoxy. They study the imperial creed with scholarly devotion, parsing every word for deeper meaning. Their battle doctrine emphasizes discipline and precision. Where other orders might rely on fury or sacrifice, the Ebon Chalice trusts in perfect execution of proven tactics, and in the flawless application of sacred doctrine. They are particularly renowned for their use of fire in battle. The cleansing flame has always been central to the Adepta Sororitas, but the Ebon Chalice has elevated it to an art form. They deploy flamers with devastating efficiency, their faith seeming to guide the sacred fires to consume the unworthy while sparing the righteous. Their prayers speak of purification through flame, of burning away corruption to reveal purity beneath. The order operates primarily from the Convent Prioris on Terra, though they maintain preceptories and commanderies across the Segmentum Solar. Since the formation of the Great Rift, they have been instrumental in defending the Imperium's heartland, fighting to keep the Segmentum Solar secure from the chaos incursions that threaten to overwhelm it. Their battles against the Blades of the Despoiler and other chaos warbands have become legendary, their black-armored warriors standing as an unbreakable bulwark against the darkness. Where the Ebon Chalice represents tradition and orthodoxy, the Order of Our Martyred Lady embodies sacrifice and glory through death. Founded by St. Catherine, who was originally the founder of the Order of the Fiery Heart before her martyrdom, this order has developed what some call a cult of martyrdom. To die in service to the Emperor is considered the highest honor any mortal can achieve. But among the Sisters of Our Martyred Lady, this belief burns with particular intensity. Their armor is black, trimmed with red, their cloaks now crimson in memory of the blood spilled during the Third War for Armageddon, where over half the order was lost in brutal fighting against greenskin invaders. The sisters dye their hair white in honor of St. Catherine, whose own hair turned white from the visions she received. They are often called upon for the most dangerous missions, the battles where casualties are not just expected, but inevitable, because they face death not with resignation, but with joy, seeing it as their path to the Emperor's side. The Order's combat doctrine reflects this acceptance of sacrifice. They fight hardest when below their starting strength, their fury intensifying as their sisters fall around them. When a canoness of Our Martyred Lady dies in battle, her remaining warriors don't falter. Instead, they fight with renewed conviction, seeking bloody vengeance for their fallen leader. They throw themselves into situations that other forces would avoid, trusting that the Emperor will judge whether they live or die, and either outcome brings glory to his name. St. Catherine's martyrdom came during her wars of faith, when she led crusades to liberate worlds from heretics and xenos. She was struck down in battle, but even in death, her spirit seemed to endure. The triumph of St. Catherine, a sacred relic that contains her blessed remains and still beating heart, is carried into battle by the Order. Sisters bearing this holy procession report feeling Catherine's presence guiding them, strengthening their faith, turning impossible battles into victories. The Order of Our Martyred Lady operates from the Convent Sanctorum on Ophelia 7, but their preceptories are scattered across Segmentum Obscurus. Many of these strongholds became isolated when the Great Rift tore the galaxy in two, but the sisters did not despair. Instead, they saw it as another test of faith, another opportunity to prove their devotion through sacrifice and struggle. If Our Martyred Lady represents sacrifice, then the Order of the Bloody Rose represents fury. Founded in honor of Saint Mina, this order has cultivated righteous rage into a weapon as deadly as any bolter or flamer. From the moment a novitiate joins the Bloody Rose, she is taught to foster her most violent impulses, to channel her anger toward the Emperor's enemies. Litanies of heretical deeds are burned into the minds of recruits, filling them with hatred for those who would oppose the Imperium. Prayers that other orders whisper in contemplative silence are bellowed by the bloody rose as battle cries. Their armor is blood red, their cloaks black with white linings, their weapons as dark as their cloaks. They are executioners, dedicated to bringing swift and terrible ends to the Emperor's foes. Where other orders might accept surrender or offer mercy, the Bloody Rose shows no such hesitation. They exist to kill, and they do so with a fervor that can seem almost unseemly to outsiders, but which they see as pure devotion. The Order's combat doctrine emphasizes aggression and speed. Their Dominion squads are particularly renowned, rushing forward with special weapons to break enemy formations before the main force arrives. In close combat, they add to their already formidable attacks, their fury making each blow strike harder and each thrust cut deeper. They have been known to move from planet to planet in crusades of extermination, killing cultists without stopping to free the imprisoned, their focus singular and absolute. Saint Mina herself was known for her swift execution of the Emperor's judgment, and her spiritual daughters carry on this tradition. They believe that hesitation is weakness, that mercy shown to heretics is itself a sin. When the Bloody Rose takes the field, the battle is brief and brutal, ending in total annihilation of the enemy or the martyrdom of the sisters, with no middle ground acceptable. In stark contrast to the rage of the Bloody Rose stands the Order of the Sacred Rose, founded in honor of Saint Arabella. Where their sister order cultivates fury, the Sacred Rose embodies serenity and discipline. They believe that victory comes not from passion, but from unwavering faith and calm determination. In the face of horror and chaos, they remain composed, their voices never rising above measured tones as they recite their prayers and advance upon the enemy. Their armor is white, their cloaks black with red linings, their weapons painted red to represent the blood of martyrs. They project an image of purity and grace, even in the midst of the galaxy's worst battlefields. But this serenity should not be mistaken for weakness. The Sacred Rose are no less deadly than their more aggressive sister orders. They simply kill with precision rather than passion, their calm allowing them to exploit enemy weaknesses that others might miss in the heat of battle. The Order maintains that they are not merely servants of the Emperor, but conduits of his will. They teach that their words and actions are guided by divine wisdom, that faith alone is sufficient to achieve victory. This philosophy has led them to wage wars of faith in regions long thought lost, freeing imperial planets from Xenos and heretical domination through sheer determination and unshakable belief. Their Retributor squads are particularly renowned, their heavy weapons teams maintaining iron discipline even under the most intense fire. Where other warriors might waver or panic, the Sacred Rose remains steadfast, their shots placed with calculated precision. They excel at defensive battles, holding positions that should be overrun, their resolve unbreakable. Based on terror within the convent prioris, the Order of the Sacred Rose has maintained their vigil even as the galaxy has been torn apart by the Great Rift. The majority of their sanctuaries lie deep within the Imperium Nihilus, the dark half of the galaxy cut off from terror's light, yet few have succumbed to the nightmares unleashed across those benighted worlds. The Sacred Rose remain a steadfast bastion of hope, their calm faith standing against the tide of despair. The Order of the Argent Shroud, founded by Saint Silvana, takes as their watchword swiftness and surprise. While other orders might advance with stately dignity or rage-fueled aggression, the Argent Shrouds strike like lightning, appearing where they are least expected and vanishing before the enemy can mount an effective response. Their armor is silvery white, seeming to shimmer in battle like a mirage, and they move with a grace that belies the weight of their power armor. Saint Silvana was known for her ability to be in multiple places at once, or so it seemed to those who fought beside her. In truth, she simply moved so quickly and efficiently that she could affect multiple points of the battle in rapid succession. Her spiritual daughters have inherited this emphasis on mobility and speed, using it to devastating effect on battlefields across the galaxy. The Argent Shroud's combat doctrine allows them to advance and still maintain their firing positions, their shots accurate even while on the move. They excel at flanking maneuvers and rapid redeployments, keeping enemies off balance and unable to predict where the next strike will fall. They are also particularly resistant to psychic assault, yet their strong faith providing additional protection against the witch's curse. Finally, there is the Order of the Valorous Heart, founded in honor of Saint Lucia, a woman renowned for her incredible endurance and ability to withstand suffering in the Emperor's name. The Valorous Heart teach that no amount of pain is too great when endured for the Emperor, that suffering itself can be a form of worship. They accept casualties and hardship with stoic determination, never complaining, never yielding. Their sisters are trained to shrug off wounds that would fell lesser warriors. They possess an almost supernatural resilience, fighting on despite injuries that should incapacitate them. This is not merely physical toughness, but a manifestation of their faith and their conviction that the Emperor will sustain them as long as they have work to do in his name. The Order is particularly known for their use of archoflagellants, those tragic souls transformed into mindless killing machines as punishment for their crimes. Where other orders use these creatures sparingly, the Valorous Heart deploy them more frequently, drawing inspiration from their redemptive suffering. They see in the archoflagellants a reflection of their own philosophy, that through pain and sacrifice, even the fallen can serve the Emperor. These 6 orders represent the core of the Adepta Sororitas, but they are not alone. Countless minor orders have splintered from the major ones over the millennia, each developing their own unique traditions and interpretations of the Imperial Creed. Some remain closely tied to their parent order, while others have diverged significantly. But whether major or minor, traditional or innovative, all orders militant share the same fundamental truth. They are the Emperor's daughters, and they will stop at nothing to defend his Imperium. Faith made manifest. Miracles on the battlefield. To understand the Sisters of Battle, one must understand that they possess something that cannot be measured in kilograms of armor plate or rates of fire. They possess faith, not as an abstract concept or philosophical position, but as a tangible force that manifests on the battlefield in ways that defy all rational explanation. Witnesses to their battles, from allied Imperial Guard soldiers to space marines, have reported phenomena that can only be described as miracles. These miracles take the form of what the Adepta Sororitas call acts of faith, are moments when pure devotion bends reality itself to the Emperor's will. A sister firing her bolter at a distant enemy might see her shot curve impossibly through the air, guided by divine providence to strike a target she could not possibly have hit through skill alone. A squad of battle sisters caught in an artillery barrage might emerge unscathed, the shells seeming to detonate just short of their position or their armor, turning aside shrapnel that should have penetrated. A sister cut down by enemy fire might rise again, her wounds closing, granted one more chance to strike at the Emperor's foes. These are not psychological phenomena or the result of advanced technology misunderstood. They are genuine alterations of probability and physics, effects that can be observed and measured but not explained. As the Mechanicus has studied these occurrences for millennia, attempting to quantify and understand them, but faith resists such analysis. It operates according to laws that exist outside the Omnissiah's logic, powered by belief rather than electricity or chemical reactions. At the heart of this miraculous power lies what the sisters call miracle dice, though this name is merely a convenient metaphor for something far more complex. Throughout a battle, as the sisters perform acts of devotion and sacrifice, they generate what might be called stored potential, moments of divine favor that can be called upon when needed most. Each time a unit of sisters is destroyed, their martyrdom creates a surge of holy power. Each objective they hold in the Emperor's name accumulates divine blessing. When the warlord leads from the front, inspiring her warriors through example, faith flows more freely. This accumulated power manifests as absolute certainty in critical moments. A sister about to fire knows with perfect conviction that her shot will strike true. She does not hope or pray in that instant. She knows. And because she knows, Because her faith is absolute, reality conforms to her expectation. The shot that should miss instead finds its mark. The enemy that should survive instead falls. The charge that should fail instead succeeds. But this power is not unlimited, nor can it be summoned casually. Each manifestation of faith requires sacrifice, the expenditure of that accumulated blessing. And the sisters must choose carefully when to call upon these miracles, when to trust in skill, and when to invoke the Emperor's direct intervention. A miracle spent on a routine hit might be wasted when a critical wound roll comes later, but a miracle saved might never be spent at all if the sister falls before she can use it. The mechanics of faith are complex and strategic. A sister facing a crucial moment might substitute her accumulated divine favor for the role of chance, turning uncertainty into certainty. She might use this blessing to ensure a charge succeeds, crossing distance that should have been too great. She might use it to guarantee a killing blow against a monstrous enemy, her weapon striking with perfect precision. She might use it to save a comrade, her armor turning aside an attack that should have proven fatal. Some sisters and units are particularly adept at generating and channeling this power. The triumph of Saint Catherine, as that holy relic containing the blessed remains and beating heart of their martyred saint, radiates faith so powerfully that nearby sisters find miracles coming more easily. The Dialogus, scholars of the Imperial Creed, can focus this power, turning even modest miracles into perfect manifestations of the Emperor's will. The Imagifier, bearing the sacred standards and relics of the Order, can allow a unit to perform multiple acts of faith in rapid succession, miracles cascading one after another in a display of divine favor. But beyond these mechanical manifestations of faith, the sisters possess a more fundamental protection, the shield of faith. Every sister, from the newest novitiate to the most veteran canoness, is surrounded by an invisible aegis of belief. This shield manifests as a kind of probability field, or altering the path of incoming fire, weakening the force of blows that land, turning near hits into misses and glancing strikes into harmless impacts. The shield of faith is not perfect armor. It cannot stop a direct hit from a lascannon any more than ceramite plate can, but it adds another layer of protection, another chance for survival. More importantly, it extends to all sisters regardless of rank or equipment, a constant reminder that the Emperor watches over those who serve him faithfully. And unlike mechanical shields or force fields, the shield of faith never needs recharging, never runs out of power, never fails due to technical malfunction. As long as a sister's faith remains pure, she remains protected. This shield also provides protection against a threat that many Imperial forces cannot effectively counter: psychic assault. Oh, the witch, the psyker, has always been viewed with suspicion by the faithful, and the Sisters of Battle embody this distrust completely. Their faith provides some measure of resistance to psychic powers, their absolute conviction in the Emperor's protection acting as a kind of spiritual armor against the manipulations of witches and sorcerers. Examples of these miracles are recorded throughout the sisters' long history. During the defense of the cardinal world of Ocassis against Hive Fleet Kraken, Canoness Praxides was struck down by a Hive tyrant, her body broken and dying. Yet her faith gave her strength for one final blow, her power mace caving in the monster's skull even as her own life fled. With the Hive tyrant dead, the swarm lost cohesion, and the sisters won a victory that should have been impossible. On the world of Van Horn, the Order of the Ebon Chalice faced the bloodthirster Kajaganath and its blood tide. Some sisters fell to corruption upon contact with this demonic manifestation, but those who endured fought on despite impossible odds, their faith protecting them from temptations that would have broken lesser warriors. Though the battle ended in tragedy, with even the survivors ultimately slain by Grey Knights, to prevent the spread of corruption, their faithful resistance provided the time needed to banish the demon. During the wars of the False Primarch, countless sisters fought and died defending the Imperium against this mysterious threat. Their faith never wavered, even in the face of horrors that drove other Imperial forces to madness or despair. And time and again, their devotion manifested in miracles, as in impossible survivals and improbable victories that could only be attributed to the Emperor's direct intervention. The Indomitus Crusade brought new challenges and new opportunities for the sisters to demonstrate their faith. As Primarch Rabut Guilliman led Imperial forces in a desperate attempt to stabilize the Imperium after the opening of the Great Rift, the Sisters of Battle were there, their faith shining in the darkness like beacons of hope. The Order of Our Martyred Lady and Order of the Ebon Chalice formed the spearhead of Fleet Tertius, fighting along what became known as the Road of Martyrs, their advance marked by countless acts of devotion and sacrifice. But perhaps the most consistent miracle is simply the sisters' ability to continue fighting when all hope seems lost. Outnumbered, outgunned, and cut off from reinforcements and facing certain death, the sisters do not surrender. They do not retreat. They stand and they fight. And sometimes, through faith alone, they prevail.
You know, I've been covering Warhammer lore for quite a while, and I have to say the Sisters of Battle are genuinely one of the most fascinating factions in the entire setting. What gets me is that they're not gene-enhanced Supermen or ancient robots or reality-warping aliens. They're just people, incredibly devoted, absolutely terrifying people, sure, but fundamentally human. And yet, they achieve things that should be impossible through sheer force of belief. There's something both inspiring and deeply unsettling about that. It makes you wonder what we could accomplish if we believed in anything with even a fraction of that intensity. Though, let's be honest, their level of devotion would probably be considered a cult in any other context. But in the grim darkness of the far future, maybe that's exactly what humanity needs. But anyways, let's get back to the lore.
Not because they are stronger than their enemies, not because their weapons are superior, but because their conviction is absolute. This is the power of faith made manifest. This is what separates the Adepta Sororitas from every other military force in the Imperium. Space Marines fight with genetic perfection and millennial training. Imperial Guard fight with courage born of duty and discipline. Skitarii fight with mechanized precision and augmented capability. But the Sisters of Battle fight with faith, and faith, as they prove time and again, is the most powerful weapon of all. When a sister steps onto a battlefield, and she carries with her 10,000 years of accumulated devotion, every prayer recited by every sister since Alicia Dominica stood before the Golden Throne flows through her. Every hymn sung, every sacrifice made, every martyr's death, all of it combines to create a reservoir of spiritual power that defies measurement or comprehension. And when the moment comes, when death seems certain and victory impossible, she can draw upon that power and perform miracles. This is not magic, though the ignorant might call it such. This is not psychic power, though it achieves effects that psychers might envy. This is faith, pure and simple, absolute belief in the Emperor's divinity and protection, and in the grim darkness of the far future. Faith moves mountains, turns aside bullets, and grants victory against impossible odds. The Sisters of Battle prove this truth on 1,000 battlefields every day, their miracles testament to the power of unwavering devotion. Living saints. Death cannot hold the faithful. Among all the miracles performed by the Adepta Sororitas, none is more spectacular or more inspiring than the manifestation of a living saint. These are individuals whose faith burns so brightly that death itself cannot contain them, warriors who return from apparent destruction again and again, each resurrection a testimony to the Emperor's divine power and the strength of absolute devotion. The most famous and most powerful of all living saints is Saint Celestine, a figure whose legend has grown to rival that of the original matriarchs who founded the Order's militant. Her story is one of death, resurrection, and service that transcends mortal limitations. He has a tale that inspires sisters across the galaxy and fills the enemies of the Imperium with dread. Celestine's origins are shrouded in mystery and deliberate obscurity, her early life and battles largely suppressed from official records. What is known is that she began as a sister repentia of the Order of Our Martyred Lady, one of those warriors who had failed in their duties and sought redemption through glorious death in battle. She fought during the Palatine Crusade, a prolonged war against thousands of heretics who had risen in rebellion against the Imperium. During the siege of the capital city on the planet Eurytion, Celestine fell, struck down by enemy fire after killing over 100 schismatics. Her sisters retrieved her body, preparing to perform the rites of mourning. But they found that life still flickered within her broken form. Believing her touched by the Emperor himself, they cleansed her wounds and discovered them healed, her body made whole through divine intervention. The next day, when the assault resumed, Celestine stood at its head, restored and transfigured. The battle lasted mere hours, the heretics crushed by this living miracle at the vanguard of the faithful. Celestine became the figurehead of the Palatine Crusade, leading Imperial forces to countless victories across the sector. But the Lord Militant who commanded the crusade wanted to assault the sector's capital world to end the war swiftly. Celestine, however, insisted upon first liberating a small, seemingly insignificant world called Sanctus Lys. Unknown to all but her, this world held the shrine of Saint Catherine, a sacred site that the founder of her order had visited in secret before her death. Celestine entered the shrine's hidden crypt alone, forbidding any to follow her. At dawn, she emerged changed. She wore the armor of Saint Catherine, ancient power armor of magnificent craftsmanship, and wielded the ardent blade, a power sword so bright that none could bear to look directly upon it. She had been transfigured, becoming a vessel for the Emperor's divine radiance. Lord Ansgar declared her a living saint, and her legend truly began. From that moment forward, Saint Celestine led crusades across the Imperium. Her presence on a battlefield inspired adoration in the faithful and terror in heretics. She could summon psychic fires to smite her enemies, heal wounded allies through faith alone, and perform feats that seemed impossible. Yet she wielded her blade with skill that transcended mere training, each stroke guided by divine purpose. But living saints, despite their power, are not invulnerable. Celestine fell in battle against the renegade warmaster of Forax, apparently killed when the tyrant triggered a nuclear meltdown that reduced kilometers of territory to ash and dust. The Tower of Heroes on Terra tolled once to mark her passing, and 1 billion souls paused in their labor to mourn her loss. Yet the Sisters of Battle did not despair. They knew what others did not. If Celestine had truly fallen, she now sat at the Emperor's right hand in glory. And if the Emperor still had need of her, she would return. Their faith was rewarded. Celestine appeared again, resurrection following apparent death, ready to serve once more. This became the pattern of her existence, as she would fight, inspiring Imperial forces to impossible victories. She would fall, her body broken by enemy action. She would return, her wounds healed, ready to battle again. Each resurrection proved anew the Emperor's power. Each return from death a miracle that strengthened the faith of all who witnessed it. During the 13th Black Crusade, perhaps the greatest test the Imperium had faced since the Horus Heresy, Celestine appeared at the head of thousands of Sisters of Battle who had been thought lost in the warp for centuries. She became one of the key Imperial commanders, personally battling Abaddon the Despoiler himself in single combat. During this campaign, she performed one of her most remarkable miracles, resurrecting 2 canonesses who had fallen in battle against the demon prince Urcanthos before the fortress city of Casa Kraf. These 2 warriors, Genevieve and Eleanor, became the Gemini Superior, Celestine's chosen bodyguards and companions. They share her resurrection ability, dying and returning alongside their saint, their devotion so absolute that even death cannot separate them from her service. They fight at her sides with plasma pistols and power weapons, their skill and faith making them formidable warriors in their own right. When Cardia fell, destroyed by the will of Abaddon and the forces of chaos, Celestine guided the survivors to safety. She led Belisarius Cawl, Inquisitor Greyfax, and Marshal Marius Amalrich to a hidden webway portal, where elder allies saved them from the pursuing Black Legion. This alliance between the living saint and the ancient Xenos was controversial, but it demonstrated Celestine's willingness to take any action, forge any alliance, if it served the Emperor's purposes. She continued her crusade during the Indomitus period, appearing on Macragge alongside Primarch Guilliman, fighting at Vigilus during the War of Nightmares, rallying defenders on Sangua Terra during the Nachmund Rift War. Each appearance brought hope to desperate situations. Each battle saw miracles performed through her faith. She has died countless times, each death followed by resurrection, her existence a continuous cycle of sacrifice and renewal. But Celestine is not unique in being a living saint, merely the most famous and most active. The Adepta Sororitas has produced other saints who have transcended death, though their appearances are rarer and often more limited in scope. Saint Aeneas fought during the War of Faith in the Kaurava system, possessed of an ability called the Inviolable Aura that made every battle sister in her presence nearly invincible. This power, however, depended upon holy shrines that anchored the faithful. When those shrines were destroyed, the aura failed, demonstrating that even living saints have limitations. Saint Valpurgis, a Celestian superior known as the Purgator of the Smotherpox and Slayer of Witches, achieved sainthood through her deeds before ultimately falling in battle. Saint Arabella, one of the original companions of Alicia Dominica, disappeared in the late 36th millennium, shortly after the death of St. Mina, and her ultimate fate unknown, but her legacy living on in the Order of the Sacred Rose that bears her name. The path to living sainthood is not one that can be deliberately sought. It requires a combination of absolute faith, miraculous deeds, martyrdom, and the Emperor's direct intervention. Most sisters who die in battle remain dead, their sacrifice honored but final. But occasionally, very rarely, a sister's faith burns so brightly that the Emperor himself reaches down to preserve her, to return her to the battlefield where she can continue to serve. The process of creating a living saint is not understood, even by the ecclesiarchy and the highest-ranking members of the Adepta Sororitas. The tech priests of Mars have studied these individuals, attempting to quantify the source of their power, but faith resists scientific analysis. What is clear is that living saints exist partially outside normal reality, sustained by psychic energy, but not in the way that psychers channel the warp. They do not draw upon the warp's corrupting power, but instead channel something purer, perhaps a reflection of the Emperor's own might. Living saints possess abilities that seem to defy physics. Saint Celestine has been observed fighting in the void of space without environmental protection, walking across surfaces that should have been lethal, surviving in toxic atmospheres that would kill unprotected humans instantly. She does not need to breathe, eat, or sleep in the way mortals do. She is sustained by psychic energy, by faith made manifest in physical form. Yet despite these superhuman qualities, living saints remain fundamentally human in a way that Space Marines and other enhanced warriors do not. They have not been genetically modified or surgically altered. Their power comes purely from faith, from the Emperor's blessing, from devotion so absolute that it transcends mortal limitations. This makes them powerful symbols, proof that ordinary humans, through faith alone, can achieve impossible things. For the Adepta Sororitas, living saints serve multiple purposes. They are commanders and heroes, certainly, leading battles and inspiring warriors, but they are also proof of concept, living validation of everything the sisters believe. When a sister sees Saint Celestine rise from apparent death, wreathed in divine light and ready to fight again, it reinforces her own faith. If Celestine can transcend death through devotion, then perhaps the sister's own sacrifices have meaning. Perhaps her own prayers are heard. Perhaps the Emperor truly does watch over his faithful. This is why the Order's militant venerate living saints with such fervor. They represent the ultimate expression of what it means to be a sister of battle. Faith made manifest, devotion transcending death, service without end. They are not distant figures from ancient history, but active warriors fighting in the present day, their miracles observable and undeniable. The existence of living saints also serves as a powerful recruiting tool and inspiration for new generations of sisters. Young novitiates hear the stories of St. Celestine's resurrections, of St. Catherine's visions, of St. Mina's swift justice. They learn that through faith and devotion, they too might achieve greatness, might perform miracles, might even transcend death itself to continue serving the Emperor. But perhaps most importantly, living saints remind the Imperium that the Emperor still acts in the galaxy. In an age where many view the Emperor as little more than a corpse sustained on a golden throne, unable or unwilling to intervene in the struggles of his subjects, living saints are proof that he remains active, that he still fights for humanity, that his power continues to manifest through those who truly believe. When Saint Celestine descends upon a battlefield, wings of pure white spreading from her back, the ardent blade burning in her hands, she is not merely a powerful warrior. She is a message from the Emperor himself, a declaration that faith matters, that devotion has power, that the light still shines in the darkness. And for the Adepta Sororitas, who stake everything on the truth of these beliefs, that message is worth more than any weapon, more valuable than any fortress, more precious than life itself. The Holy Trinity, weapons of the faithful. The Adepta Sororitas are renowned for their devotion to what they call the Holy Trinity of weaponry, the bolter, the flamer, and the melter. These three weapon types form the core of the sisters' arsenal, each representing a different aspect of the Emperor's judgment, and each blessed with sacred significance that transcends their purely practical applications. The bolter, that iconic weapon of the Adeptus Astartes, finds a special place in the hands of the Sisters of Battle. But where Space Marines wield their bolters with genetic perfection and millennial training, the Sisters bring something different: faith. Each bolt shell fired by a sister has been consecrated in week-long rituals. Novitiates sing hymns over crates of ammunition, their voices rising in prayer as they anoint each shell with sacred oils and inscribe them with verses from the Feder Imperialis. The bolter represents the Emperor's wrath made manifest, each explosive shell a prayer of judgment sent down range at supersonic speeds. When a sister fires her bolter, she is not merely pulling a trigger, she is pronouncing the Emperor's condemnation upon his enemies. The weapon's distinctive crack boom sound, the initial rocket ignition followed by the explosive detonation, becomes a percussion to the hymns the sisters sing in battle. Battle sisters carry standard pattern bolt guns, weapons identical in function to those wielded by Space Marines, but scaled for human physiology. These are still formidable weapons, each shell capable of punching through light armor and detonating inside the target, the mass-reactive warhead transforming flesh and bone into expanding clouds of gore. The Sister Superior often carries a special variant, the Condemner bolt gun, which includes a single-shot stake weapon designed specifically to kill psychers, its blessed projectile seeking out those tainted by the witch's curse. But the bolter is merely the first element of the Trinity. The second is fire itself, manifested through flamers of various sizes and configurations. If the bolter represents wrath, the flamer represents purification. The Adepta Sororitas are obsessed with fire in a way that goes beyond mere tactical preference. They see in the cleansing flame a reflection of the Emperor's light, air burning away corruption and leaving only purity in its wake. Ministorum flamers are standard equipment for many sisters, their distinctive design incorporating religious iconography and blessing mechanisms. These weapons project streams of burning promethium, the sacred fuel igniting on contact with air to create walls of purifying fire. The flames consume heretics and Xenos alike, their dying screams serving as prayers to the Emperor, their ashes sanctifying the ground upon which they fall. For close quarters purification, The hand flamer offers similar capability in a more compact package, small enough to be wielded one-handed, while the sister uses a close combat weapon in her other hand. For situations requiring more intensive cleansing, the heavy flamer provides greater range and fuel capacity, while allowing sustained burning that can clear entire corridors of enemies or set ablaze fields of advancing foes. The sister's use of flame extends beyond mere weaponry. Many vehicles and war engines incorporate burning braziers and incense burners, filling the air with sacred smoke. Penitent engines often mount flamers as their primary weapons, the purifying fire, a fitting tool for those seeking redemption through suffering and service. The immolator tank takes this obsession to its logical conclusion, mounting a turret-mounted heavy flamer or multi-melter, transforming the vehicle into a mobile crematorium. The symbolism of fire permeates Sisters' culture at every level. Their fortresses incorporate vast pyres where heretics burn endlessly. Their ceremonies include flame-lighting rituals. Their prayers speak constantly of burning away impurity, of being refined in the Emperor's fire, of bringing his light to darkness. This is not mere metaphor. The Sisters genuinely believe that fire possesses holy properties, that it can cleanse corruption that might resist more mundane methods of purification. The third element of the Trinity, the melter weapon, represents the ultimate expression of the Emperor's judgment. Where flamers burn, melters obliterate, reducing armor, flesh, and bone to component atoms. The fusion technology that powers these weapons is ancient and sacred, each melter gun a relic maintained through prayer and ritual as much as through mechanical maintenance. Melter weapons come in several variants. The melter gun is the standard pattern, capable of reducing even heavy armor to slag at close range, and the multi-melter offers greater range and power, often mounted on vehicles or carried by heavy weapons teams. The Inferno pistol miniaturizes this devastating technology into a sidearm, though its range is even more limited than standard melter weapons. The tactical doctrine surrounding melters reflects their devastating but short-ranged nature. Sisters armed with these weapons advance boldly, trusting in their armor and faith to protect them as they close to effective range. Once there, they unleash holy fury capable of destroying tanks, monsters, and fortifications. The Order of Our Martyred Lady particularly favors multi-melters, their retributor squads equipped with these weapons, laying down withering fire that can obliterate enemy armor at range. But beyond the Trinity, the Sisters employ a wide array of other weapons, each blessed and sanctified for the Emperor's service. Power weapons, from the humble power maul to the magnificent power sword, channel energy fields through blessed blades, allowing them to cleave through armor that would turn aside normal steel. Chain weapons, particularly the massive Eviscerator chainsword wielded by Sisters Repentia, incorporate circular saw blades blessed by the tech priests, each tooth inscribed with devotional verses. The Storm Bolter, a double-barreled variant of the standard bolter, provides increased rate of fire for situations requiring suppression or saturation. These weapons are often handed down through generations of sisters, each new bearer adding her own prayers and devotions to the litanies inscribed upon the weapon's housing. For longer-range engagement, the heavy bolter serves as the sisters' primary heavy weapon platform outside the Holy Trinity. These weapons can lay down sustained fire, their larger shells capable of threatening light vehicles and heavy infantry. Sister superiors sometimes carry plasma pistols, ancient weapons that channel the fury of stars into handheld packages, though these weapons carry the risk of catastrophic overload if not maintained with proper reverence. Every weapon issued to the Adepta Sororitas undergoes extensive blessing before it reaches a sister's hands. The armories of the Convent Prioris on Terra and the Convent Sanctorum on Ophelia 7 are vast cathedral-like spaces where choirs of novitiates sing continuous hymns over racks of weapons. Tech priests work alongside ecclesiarchy officials, as combining mechanical expertise with spiritual devotion to ensure that each weapon is both functionally perfect and spiritually pure. The process begins with the weapon's manufacture. Even at the forge, prayers are recited, as metal is shaped and components assembled. Once completed, the weapon is transported to one of the 2 great convents, where it undergoes weeks of ritual preparation. It is anointed with sacred oils touched by saints. It is blessed by choirs whose voices have been raised in prayer without cease for years. Every component is inscribed with verses from the Imperial Creed, micro-etched prayers that cover every surface. Weapons destined for high-ranking sisters undergo even more intensive preparation. A canoness's power sword might be sprinkled with the blood of martyrs, then placed among the crypts of fallen saints to rest in their holy presence, until the canoness makes pilgrimage to claim her weapon. The relics wielded by the Order's most honored warriors, weapons with names and histories spanning millennia, are treated with reverence approaching worship. This spiritual preparation is not merely ceremonial. The sisters genuinely believe that blessed weapons fight better, that prayers inscribed on a bolt shell make it more likely to find its target, that a flamer sanctified by proper ritual burns hotter and with greater purity. And battlefield reports seem to support these beliefs. Time and again, sisters armed with properly blessed weapons perform at levels that exceed statistical probability, their shots finding gaps in armor, their flames reaching targets that should have been out of range, as the sisters also employ specialized munitions and fuel mixtures. Blessed promethium, used in flamers, is mixed with holy oils and sanctified through ritual, making it burn with distinctive pure white flames, rather than the orange-red of standard incendiary fuel. Inferno bolts, special ammunition sometimes issued for specific missions, carry additional blessings and ignite upon impact, combining the penetrating power of bolt shells with the purifying properties of fire. Beyond personal weapons, the sisters field an array of war machines and support equipment. The Exorcist, perhaps their most distinctive vehicle, combines a rhino chassis with an organ-shaped missile launcher. This vehicle embodies the sisters' aesthetic perfectly, blending hymnals with heavy weapons. The missile launcher's pipes producing sacred music even as they rain death upon the Emperor's enemies. Penitent engines and mortifiers, those grim walkers piloted by souls seeking redemption, mount heavy weapons on their arms alongside their brutal close combat implements. Watching these machines advance, flamers blazing and buzzsaws whirring, provides a glimpse into the sisters' philosophy. Even in seeking forgiveness, one serves the Emperor through violence. The Castigator tank, a battle tank designed specifically for the Adepta Sororitas, mounts a devastating autocannon that can shred infantry and threaten light armor. The Immolator, as mentioned, transforms a transport into a weapon of purification. Even the humble Rhino transport, when in Sisters' service, becomes sanctified. Is its hull inscribed with prayers, and its interior blessed to provide spiritual protection to the warriors it carries. But perhaps the ultimate expression of the sisters' approach to weaponry is the triumph of Saint Catherine, that sacred relic that bears the blessed remains of their patron saint. This is not, strictly speaking, a weapon, but its presence on the battlefield has effects more devastating than any gun. The faith it inspires, the miracles it enables, the sheer spiritual weight it brings to bear, all of these make it a weapon in the truest sense, one that strikes at morale and conviction rather than flesh and armor. The Holy Trinity of bolter, flamer, and melter represents more than just tactical preference. It embodies the sisters' understanding of their mission: to judge the Emperor's enemies, bolter, to purify corruption, flamer, and to utterly destroy that which cannot be redeemed, melter. Each weapon serves a purpose in the grand design, each has its place in the Emperor's plan, and each is wielded with absolute faith in its righteousness. When a battle sister advances across a battlefield, her bolter firing in rhythmic pulses as she sings the Emperor's praises, her flamer ready to cleanse those who draw too close, she is the living embodiment of his judgment. Her weapons are extensions of his will, tools through which divine wrath manifests in the material universe. And whether she lives or dies in the battle to come, her weapons will continue to serve, passed to another sister who will wield them with the same devotion, the same faith, the same absolute conviction that in the Emperor's service, there is only victory or glorious martyrdom, the penitent and the damned, redemption through suffering. Not all who serve the Adepta Sororitas do so wearing the blessed armor of the Order's militant. Some serve in chains, their bodies broken and modified, their minds twisted by pain and guilt. These are the penitent, those who have failed in their duties or committed crimes so heinous that even death would be too lenient a punishment. They serve the Emperor still, but through suffering that would break lesser souls, their anguish transformed into a weapon against his enemies. The path of the Repentia represents perhaps the most honored form of penance within the sisterhood. These are sisters who have fallen short of the Adepta Sororitas' strict codes, warriors who have failed in their sacred duties. A battle sister who disobeys a direct command, a dialogus whose curiosity leads her to forbidden knowledge, a famulus who fails to unveil the plots of her noble charges. All these transgressions and more can result in a sister being cast out from her order and given over to the path of Repentia. The ritual of becoming a Repentia is solemn and terrible. In the presence of her squad and a superior officer, the sister confesses her failures. Her sisters remove her armor piece by piece, each component representing something lost: protection, status, identity. They cast aside her weapons, symbols of her previous service. What remains is wrapped in ragged robes, her head roughly shorn with a knife, her former name taken from her. She becomes nameless, faceless, a penitent seeking redemption through glorious death. Repentia go to war armed with massive eviscerator chainswords, two-handed weapons so large and unwieldy that only the most desperate or devoted would wield them. These weapons are as much instruments of self-flagellation as tools of war, their weight punishing, their recoil potentially damaging. But in the hands of a Repentia, driven by guilt and seeking absolution through violence, they become instruments of terrible carnage. The Repentia fight at the front of battle, hurling themselves at the enemy without armor or fear. Their robes offer no protection against bullets or blades. They rely purely on faith and fury, their eviscerators whirling in great arcs that cleave through armor and flesh alike. They do not fight to survive. They fight to die well, to earn redemption through glorious sacrifice, as to prove through their blood that their faith remains pure despite their failures. Watching over the Repentia are the Repentia superiors, also known as Repentia mistresses. These are veteran sisters who have taken on the solemn task of guiding the penitent toward redemption. They wield neural whips, weapons that can both motivate sluggish Repentia and lash out at enemies. The Repentia superior walks behind her charges in battle, her voice never ceasing, constantly reminding them of their failures, recounting their sins, ensuring that their humility and self-loathing remain strong enough to drive them forward. This might seem cruel to outsiders, but the Repentia themselves embrace it. They have failed, and failure in the service of the Emperor is intolerable. The only path back to grace lies through the crucible of battle, as through deeds of such bravery and butchery that they balance the scales of their shame. And occasionally, very rarely, a Repentia succeeds. Through extraordinary acts of heroism, she earns redemption, her sins washed away in enemy blood. Such redeemed Repentia are welcomed back into the ranks with great ceremony, their example serving to inspire others. Some of the sisterhood's greatest heroes began as Repentia. Saint Celestine herself was once a sister Repentia, her path to sainthood beginning from the lowest point of her service. This proves that even those who fall can rise again, that redemption is possible through faith and sacrifice. The existence of redeemed Repentia validates the entire system, showing that the suffering serves a purpose, that the punishment has meaning. But not all who serve the sisterhood as penitents are former sisters. Many are criminals from across the Imperium, heretics and sinners whose crimes warrant punishment but do not merit immediate execution. For these unfortunates, The ecclesiarchy offers a different path: archoflagellation, a sentence that transforms the guilty into living weapons. The process of creating an archoflagellant is horrific. The condemned is handed over to the adeptus mechanicus, who perform extensive surgical and psychological modification. The victim is lobotomized, their higher brain functions removed, their personality erased. Their arms are replaced with cybernetic weapons, massive industrial shears, electroflails, pneumatics, or other implements of destruction. A battery of chemical injectors is grafted directly onto their spine, ready to flood their body with combat drugs. Most distinctive is the pacifier helm, a crude mind control device rooted deep into the nervous system and cerebellum. When active, the pacifier helm keeps the archoflagellant in a docile, barely conscious state. What remains of their mind is filled with sacred imagery, hymns and prayers, pictures of saints and symbols of the ecclesiarchy. They stand motionless unless directed, lost in enforced religious bliss. But when battle is joined, a trigger word is spoken. The pacifier helm deactivates. The chemical injectors open, flooding the archoflagellant system with a cocktail of combat drugs. Barrage, Frenzon, Slort, Spur, and other stimulants whose names are known only to the tech priests who prepare them. The transformation is instantaneous. The docile figure erupts into violence, charging forward with inhuman speed, their weapon arms flailing in destructive arcs. Archoflagellants feel no pain when activated. The drugs push them past all physical limits. They do not tire, do not slow, do not stop until they are destroyed or all enemies are dead. In battle, they are whirlwinds of destruction, tearing through enemy lines with mindless fury. They cannot distinguish friend from foe beyond the most basic programming, making them as dangerous to nearby allies as to enemies. This is why the Sisters of Battle use them sparingly, deploying them only when collateral damage is an acceptable price. The Order of the Valorous Heart, however, has drawn great inspiration from the redemptive suffering of archoflagellants. They see in these tragic figures a reflection of their own philosophy, that through pain and sacrifice, even the fallen can serve the Emperor. They deploy archoflagellants more frequently than other orders, their kill throngs becoming infamous across the Imperium. But even archoflagellation is not the worst fate that can befall a criminal. For crimes so heinous that not even this transformation is punishment enough, there exists one final option: the penitent engine. A penitent engine is a combat walker, a mechanical frame into which a criminal is installed and condemned to suffer for their sins. The process is nightmarish. The penitent is stripped and suspended within the engine's frame, their arms locked wide into the weapon mechanisms. Wires, chemical injectors, and pain nodes are implanted directly into their spine and throughout their body. A parasitic device called the excruciatum locus is lodged into their thalamus, capable of generating artificial pain signals orders of magnitude beyond anything physical damage could produce. Outside of combat, chemical implants inject feelings of guilt and pain into the pilot's consciousness. They cannot sleep, cannot rest, cannot escape the knowledge of their crimes and the punishment they endure. Their mind, what remains of it, loops endlessly through their sins, their failures, their unworthiness. It is a hell from which there is no escape except death in the Emperor's service. When deployed for battle, the penitent engine becomes something else entirely. The pain nodes activate fully, driving the pilot into a frenzy. But this is not the mindless rage of an archoflagellant. The pilot retains enough awareness to direct the engine, to choose targets, to serve a purpose beyond mere destruction. They charge into combat with massive buzzsaws and heavy flamers, seeking to wash away their sins in enemy blood. The Sisters of Battle consider it their sacred duty to witness penitent engines in battle. They watch as these machines tear through enemy lines, as the pilots endure suffering beyond mortal comprehension. They see in the penitent engines a reminder of what awaits those who stray from the Emperor's light, a warning about the price of failure. But they also see redemption in action, sinners serving the Emperor despite their unworthiness, earning through agony what they lost through sin. A variant of the penitent engine called the Mortifier is piloted by Sisters Repentia, whose crimes are particularly severe. These modified walkers are equipped with heavier weapons and additional torture mechanisms, while the sister within suffers even more intensely than normal penitent engine pilots, her spiritual corruption requiring more intensive punishment. Yet she serves still, her suffering a prayer, her violence an act of devotion. The most extreme form of mortifier is the anchorite, reserved for the worst possible sin a sister can commit: betrayal. These wretched souls are subjected to the same psychosis-inducing punishment as other mortifier pilots, but they are then permanently sealed within an Iron Maiden-like deprivation cell. This cell isolates them from everything except their spiritual suffering, yet keeps them alive through the most grievous damage, prolonging their personal hell indefinitely. Anchorites are truly ancient, some having endured their punishment for centuries. They are so corrupted, so tainted by their betrayal, that only the most senior sisters are permitted to approach them, lest their spiritual rot spread. Yet even these damned souls serve the Emperor, their suffering a testament to the price of treachery, their continued existence a warning to all who might consider turning from the light. The use of such grotesque instruments of war raises moral questions that the Imperium typically does not concern itself with. The transformation of humans into mindless killers or suffering engines of destruction seems cruel even by the standards of a civilization that regularly performs planet-wide exterminations. But the ecclesiarchy and the Adepta Sororitas justify these practices through theology. These criminals and failed sisters are being granted a final chance to serve the Emperor. Rather than simply being executed, their sins forgiven by death, they are given the opportunity to redeem themselves through continued service. Yes, that service comes with suffering, but suffering purifies. It burns away sin. It refines the soul. And if they die in the Emperor's service, having atoned through agony and violence, perhaps they can find peace at his side. Moreover, the existence of repentia, archoflagellants, and penitent engines serves a practical purpose. They are formidable combat assets, capable of turning the tide of battles. Repentia with their eviscerators can break through enemy lines that would stop conventional troops. Archoflagellants in their drug-fueled rage can clear rooms and corridors with terrifying efficiency. Penitent engines can assault fortified positions and heavy armor that would resist smaller weapons. But perhaps most importantly, they serve as warning and inspiration. For the Sisters of Battle, the existence of the Repentia path means that even failure is not the end, that redemption remains possible through faith and sacrifice. For potential criminals, the spectre of archoflagellation or internment in a penitent engine serves as a powerful deterrent, a reminder of the fate that awaits those who stray from the Emperor's light. And for allies fighting alongside these penitent warriors, their presence serves as a stark illustration of the Imperium's commitment to punishing sin, while still utilizing every possible resource. Nothing is wasted in the Imperium, not even the souls of the damned. Even those who have fallen can still serve, still fight, still die for the Emperor, their suffering transformed into a weapon against his enemies. This is the paradox at the heart of the penitent's existence. They are both punished and honored, damned and redeemed, suffering and serving simultaneously. They embody the Imperium's harsh philosophy that life has value only in service, that redemption comes through pain, that even the fallen can find purpose through violence in the Emperor's name. Wars without end, the Sisters in Battle. Across 10,000 years of service, the Adepta Sororitas have fought on countless battlefields against every enemy the Imperium has ever faced. Their wars span from the earliest days of their founding to the present crisis of the Imperium Nihilus, from minor skirmishes against heretical cults to apocalyptic confrontations that determine the fate of entire sectors. Each battle adds to their legacy. Each victory proves the power of faith. And each defeat becomes a lesson in sacrifice and devotion. The Palatine Crusade stands as one of the defining moments in the Sisters' history, the campaign where Saint Celestine first revealed herself as a living saint. The crusade began as a response to the Palatine Schism, a massive rebellion that saw thousands of heretics rise against imperial authority across an entire sector. The schismatics controlled multiple worlds, their forces numbered in the millions, and they had fortified their positions with fanatic determination. The Sisters of Battle, still relatively young as an organization, joined this crusade with their faith burning bright. They fought through world after world, cleansing heretics with bolter and flamer. The siege of Eurytion became legendary, the sisters assaulting fortified positions again and again, their hymns rising above the roar of battle. It was here that Celestine, then merely a sister repentia seeking redemption, fell in combat after killing over 100 schismatics single-handedly. Her resurrection the next day, her body healed through what could only be divine intervention, transformed the crusade. With Celestine at their head, seemingly invincible and divinely blessed, the imperial forces swept through the remaining heretic strongholds. The final assault on the capital world should have been the campaign's climax, but Celestine insisted upon first liberating Sanctus Lys, a seemingly insignificant world. When she emerged from St. Catherine's shrine, wearing the martyred saint's armor and wielding the ardent blade, wreathed in divine radiance, the Palatine Crusade became more than a military campaign, but it became a demonstration of the Emperor's power, proof that he still acted in the galaxy, that faith could achieve miracles. The Crusade's completion saw the entire sector cleansed of heresy, with Celestine hailed as a living saint by Lord Ansgar himself. But not all battles end in such glorious victory. The defense of Sanctuary 101 on the eastern fringe became a tragedy that demonstrated the sisters' willingness to sacrifice themselves to the last warrior. The fortress convent, established by the order of our martyred lady, came under attack in 897 and 41 by an enemy that would not be identified until much later, the Necrons. Every sister within the stronghold died fighting. The defense was desperate and fierce, but the technological superiority of the Necrons proved overwhelming. Corrupted video logs were the only evidence of what transpired, showing glimpses of metallic warriors phasing through walls, ghost weapons reducing sisters to component atoms, and desperate last stands in the convent's sacred halls. The sisters fought to the last, no retreat, no surrender. Their bodies found later bearing evidence of close combat fought when ammunition ran out. The Third War for Armageddon saw the Order of Our Martyred Lady suffer devastating casualties, defending the hive world against a massive greenskin invasion. The fighting was brutal, urban warfare at its worst, with both sides refusing to yield ground. The sisters held key positions throughout the war, their stubborn defense buying time for imperial reinforcements to arrive and turn the tide. But the cost was terrible. Over half the order was lost in the campaign. Thousands of battle sisters martyred in the defense of a single world. In memory of this sacrifice, the order changed the color of their robes from black to red, the crimson representing the blood spilled in the Emperor's service. This tradition continues to this day, every sister of our martyred lady wearing red robes as a reminder of Armageddon's cost. The 13th Black Crusade tested the entire Imperium as Abaddon the Despoiler led his forces out of the Eye of Terror in the greatest chaos assault since the Horus Heresy. Multiple orders committed forces to this desperate defense, but none more significantly than the mysterious appearance of Saint Celestine leading thousands of sisters who had been lost in the warp for centuries. The sisters fought across multiple fronts, defending fortress worlds, evacuating civilians, and engaging Chaos Space Marines in brutal combat. Celestine personally dueled Abaddon, her ardent blade clashing against his demon sword Drakenyen in a battle that shook the foundations of reality. Though Cadia ultimately fell, destroyed by the will of the Despoiler, the sisters' actions saved countless lives and prevented even greater catastrophe. During this campaign, Celestine resurrected the canonesses Genevieve and Eleanor after they fell in battle against the demon prince Ercanthos. These two became her Gemini superior, bound to her in service beyond death. The 13th Black Crusade also saw the sisters fight alongside diverse imperial forces. including Space Marines, Imperial Guard, and even, controversially, Eldar allies, facilitated by Celestine herself. As the opening of the Great Rift and the subsequent Indomitus Crusade brought new challenges and opportunities, Primarch Rabute Guilliman returned from his millennial slumber, launched a massive campaign to stabilize the fractured Imperium. The Sisters of Battle participated enthusiastically, seeing in the Primarch's return another sign of the Emperor's active involvement in galactic affairs. Fleet Tertius of the Indomitus Crusade was spearheaded by sisters from the Order of the Ebon Chalice and Order of Our Martyred Lady. Their advance toward the Eye of Terror became known as the Road of Martyrs, a fitting name for a campaign marked by desperate battles and heavy casualties. The sisters fought to reclaim worlds lost to chaos, their faith serving as both weapon and shield against demonic corruption. The War of Beasts on Vigilus saw the Order of the Ebon Chalice defend this critical hive world against multiple threats simultaneously. Vigilus sat at one end of the Nachmund Gauntlet, the only stable passage through the Great Rift. Its defense was essential for maintaining communication between the Imperium's halved territories. The sisters held key positions throughout the prolonged conflict, fighting against Greenskins, Chaos Forces, and Genestealer cult uprisings. Saint Celestine appeared during the War of Nightmares on Vigilus, rallying defenders at Hive Mortwald. She led Battle Sisters and Space Marines against a trio of giant demon hosts summoned by the Black Legion sorcerer Zagramothis. Though she ultimately vanished in empiric fire after destroying all three demonic entities, her appearance turned the tide at a critical moment. In smaller campaigns and battles fill the sisters' history as well. The purging of pain cults in the Nephilim sector saw the Order of the Bloody Rose move from planet to planet, butchering cultists with such single-minded focus that Hospitallers and Dialoguers following in their wake found many enslaved victims had perished, the Bloody Rose prioritizing complete extermination over rescue. This led to controversy, but also to the canonization of the campaign's leader, Canoness Murray, as a saint. The defense of the Cathedral of Saint Dufaux in 938-41 demonstrated the sisters' willingness to sacrifice everything in defense of holy sites. Greenskin forces under Warboss Blackaxe drove the Battle Sisters from the Order of the Valorous Heart and Order of the Ebon Chalice back to the cathedral's very walls. As only the sacrifice of hundreds of Sisters Repentia allowed the defenders time to open the mighty gates and unleash 24 penitent engines, which reaped bloody vengeance in the martyrs' names. The martyrdom of Canoness Praxides on Ocassis showed how individual heroism can turn battles. As Hive Fleet Kraken assaulted the Cardinal World, Praxides led the defense of the ecclesiarchal cathedral. The first wave of Tyranids fell to massed fire from Retributor squads and Exorcist tanks, but the second wave breached the walls. Praxides confronted a Hive tyrant in personal combat. Though the creature dealt her a mortal wound, her faith gave her strength for one final blow, crushing the beast's skull. With the tyrant dead, the swarm lost cohesion and turned upon itself, granting victory through one sister's ultimate sacrifice. The Achilles Crusade in the Jericho Reach saw extensive participation from multiple orders. This massive military campaign, launched to reclaim a region of space that had been cut off from the Imperium for millennia, required every resource the Imperium could muster. The Sisters of Battle contributed numerous preceptories and commanderies, their forces deployed across dozens of worlds simultaneously. They fought against entrenched chaos cultists who had ruled these worlds for generations, against xenospecies that had claimed human worlds as their own, and against the corrupting influence of the warp itself. During the Achilles Crusade, the sisters demonstrated their versatility across different types of warfare. On urban worlds, they excelled at street-to-street fighting, their flamers clearing buildings with brutal efficiency. On agri-worlds, they led purges through vast fields and scattered settlements, hunting down heretics who hid among the civilian population. On hive worlds, they assaulted towering spires held by cultists, fighting vertically through kilometers of hab blocks and industrial zones. One particular engagement during the Achilles Crusade has entered Sororitas legend. The Order of the Bloody Rose was tasked with cleansing a hive city where a Slaaneshi cult had taken root. The cultists had transformed entire levels of the hive into temples of excess, their depravity corrupting thousands. The sisters advanced level by level, purging with flamer and bolter, their discipline unwavering even in the face of horrors designed to break the spirit. The battle climaxed in the central spire, out where the cult's leadership had barricaded themselves in what had once been the planetary governor's palace. Canoness Jasmine led the final assault personally, her Celestian bodyguard at her side. The fighting was intense, close-quarters combat in ornate chambers defiled by chaos worship. Jasmine personally slew the cult's leader, a former Imperial official whose corruption had started the entire nightmare. The planet was saved, though the cost in sisters' lives had been heavy. The Wars of Faith represent another category of sisters' campaigns entirely. These are crusades launched by the ecclesiarchy itself, massive mobilizations of faithful warriors aimed at reclaiming or purifying entire regions of space. During the early 38th millennium, and a period when the Ministorum's power reached heights not seen since before the Age of Apostasy, 1,000 wars of faith were launched across the length and breadth of the Imperium. Billions of heretics were put to the pyre, countless worlds cleansed of corruption. The Sisters of Battle formed the core of these crusades, their zeal and faith making them ideal warriors for campaigns motivated by religious fervor rather than strategic necessity. They led armies of Frateris militia, vast mobs of faithful civilians armed with whatever weapons they could find, their numbers making up for their lack of training. They coordinated with Space Marine chapters, willing to join these holy wars, their tactical expertise complementing the Astartes' overwhelming combat power, kept these wars of faith established or reinforced the imperial cult on thousands of worlds. They brought regions that had drifted toward heresy back into orthodoxy. They demonstrated the Ministorum's reach and power, reminding the Imperium's citizens that faith mattered, that the Emperor watched, that heresy would be punished no matter where it tried to hide. But they also consumed vast resources, both material and human, their costs sometimes exceeding their benefits in purely practical terms. The Vinculus Crusade of 833 M41 saw the Order of the Bloody Rose fight alongside the Black Templars' Space Marine chapter against a demon-possessed Inquisitor. This campaign demonstrated both the sisters' dedication to rooting out corruption regardless of rank and the complexity of their relationship with other Imperial forces. But Canoness Jasmine led her forces with characteristic fury, but she also showed tactical acumen in coordinating with the Black Templars' High Marshal Ludoldus. The fighting was intense, for a demon-possessed Inquisitor commanded considerable forces and possessed supernatural powers that made them a formidable opponent. The Sisters and Black Templars had to assault fortified positions while dealing with demonic manifestations and cultist ambushes. The campaign culminated in a battle where Jasmine was martyred while aiding Ludoldus, her sacrifice allowing the High Marshal to strike the killing blow against the corrupted Inquisitor. Her death was mourned by both the Sisterhood and the Black Templars, and she was later canonized as a saint for her role in destroying such a dangerous heretic. And the defense of worlds against tyrannid invasions has become increasingly common as the hive fleets consume their way through imperial space. The Sisters have fought against these alien swarms on dozens of worlds, their experience with these encounters growing with each battle. They have learned that against tyrannids, traditional defensive positions often fail as the swarm overwhelms through sheer numbers. Instead, the Sisters have developed tactics emphasizing mobility and concentrated firepower, using their faith-based abilities to strike at synapse creatures whose deaths disrupt the hive mind's control. On the world of Thresh, the Order of the Bloody Rose faced Hive Fleet Ouroboros in a desperate last stand. The planet's defenses had collapsed, its PDF annihilated, and the Sisters found themselves as the only organized Imperial force remaining. They fought a running battle across the planet's surface, constantly retreating and regrouping as the Tyrannid swarm pursued them. One by one, the Sisters fell, martyred in rearguard actions that bought time for civilian evacuations. In the end, only Sister Assumpta survived, the last of her order on Thresh. She continued to fight alone, her faith sustaining her through injuries that should have been fatal. She witnessed the planet's final evacuation, saw the last transport ships escape into orbit, and then made her final stand in a ruined cathedral. When Imperial forces returned weeks later to assess the planet's status, they found Thresh consumed by the Tyranids, its biomass stripped to bedrock. But in that ruined cathedral, they found Sister Assumpta's armor, surrounded by hundreds of dead Tyranids, testament to her final hours of defiance. The war against Genestealer cults has become another focus of Sister's operations. These insidious Xenos infiltrators corrupt human populations from within, their influence spreading unseen until entire worlds fall under their sway. The Sisters, with their experience in rooting out heresy and their resistance to mental corruption, are ideally suited to combat this threat. They have learned to recognize the signs of Genestealer infection, to identify the subtle changes in behavior and appearance that mark cult members, to strike at cult strongholds before they can summon their alien masters. These operations require different tactics than open warfare. The Sisters must often work in secret, gathering intelligence and building cases before striking. They coordinate with local authorities when possible, though they are prepared to act alone if those authorities prove compromised. The revelation of a Genestealer cult's presence typically leads to brutal purges, entire districts or even cities put to the flame to ensure complete eradication of the Xenos taint. On some worlds, the Sisters have arrived too late, finding populations already fully under cult control. These situations require military solutions rather than surgical strikes. The Sisters lead assaults against cult strongholds, fighting through waves of infected humans whose bodies have been twisted by Xenos corruption. They destroy cult infrastructure, burn out breeding warrens where pure-strain Genestealers lurk, and execute cult leadership with extreme prejudice. The war against chaos takes many forms, from battling demon incursions to purging corrupted Imperial forces. The Sisters have fought against every aspect of the ruinous powers, facing cultists, Chaos Space Marines, demons, and worse. Their faith provides some protection against chaos corruption, but they remain vulnerable to physical attack, and the forces of the Dark Gods are cunning in their tactics. During the recent conflicts in the Nachmund Gauntlet, the Sisters fought desperate holding actions against Chaos forces, attempting to close this vital passage through the Great Rift. They defended worlds that had become strategic linchpins, their presence often making the difference between worlds holding or falling to corruption. On Sangua Terra, Saint Celestine herself appeared to rally the defenders, though even her presence could not prevent the world's eventual fall. These battles against chaos are particularly challenging because the enemy can corrupt and subvert defenders from within. A world might seem secure one day and erupt in demon-spawned violence the next. The Sisters must remain constantly vigilant, watching for signs of corruption among both civilians and fellow Imperial forces. This creates a climate of suspicion and paranoia, but the Sisters see it as necessary, understanding that trust without verification can lead to catastrophic failures. The Sisters have also participated in numerous smaller conflicts that never achieve the fame of major crusades, but are no less important. They defend shrine worlds from raiders. They escort ecclesiastical officials through dangerous regions. They provide security for major religious ceremonies. They investigate reports of heresy and corruption across the Imperium, their presence often enough to cow potential troublemakers into compliance. Each of these operations, whether a galaxy-spanning crusade or a local purge of cultists, adds to the Sisters' accumulated experience and legend. Each battle provides lessons that are codified in tactical manuals and passed down to new generations. Each martyrdom becomes a story told to novitiates, an example of how one should die in the Emperor's service. The Sisters' 10,000-year history is built from countless individual moments of faith, courage, and sacrifice, each contributing to the whole. These battles, great and small, demonstrate recurring themes in how the Sisters wage war. They favor defensive positions where their faith can sustain them through prolonged bombardment. They excel at urban warfare, where their flamers and close combat prowess turn confined spaces into killing grounds. They show particular skill at defending religious sites, their devotion to such places making them nearly impossible to dislodge. The sisters also demonstrate remarkable coordination with other Imperial forces. Unlike some Space Marine chapters that prefer to operate independently, the sisters frequently fight alongside Imperial Guard regiments, providing elite shock troops to complement the Guard's numbers. They coordinate with Space Marine forces when doctrinal differences don't prevent cooperation, their faith-based miracles complementing the Astartes' genetic perfection. Their role as the chamber militant of the Ordo Hereticus means they frequently deploy alongside Inquisitors, hunting heretics and witches. This relationship can be complex, as some Inquisitors view the sisters as mere tools, while others develop genuine respect for these warriors. But regardless of individual relationships, the sisters execute their duties with typical devotion, their faith making them ideal weapons against corruption. The sisters also prove particularly effective against psychers and demonic entities. Their shield of faith provides some protection against psychic assault, and their absolute conviction in the Emperor's divinity seems to unsettle entities spawned from the warp. Battles against chaos. Forces often see the sisters achieving victories that more secular Imperial forces could not manage, of their faith acting as a weapon that corrupted beings cannot effectively counter. But perhaps the most distinctive aspect of the sisters' combat operations is their approach to casualties. Where other forces might retreat when losses become unsustainable, the sisters often fight harder, their faith intensifying as their numbers dwindle. The martyrdom of their battle sisters does not discourage survivors. It enrages them, drives them to greater acts of heroism, validates their entire philosophy of service through sacrifice. This leads to situations that seem paradoxical from outside perspective. A severely depleted unit of battle sisters becomes more dangerous, not less, as casualties mount. Their accuracy improves, their weapons strike harder, their armor turns aside blows that should penetrate. This is not mere psychological effect, but a genuine manifestation of their faith, their acts of faith becoming more powerful as they approach total annihilation. The strategic implications are significant. Enemy commanders who believe they have broken a sisters' formation through casualties often find themselves facing an even more formidable foe. The sisters do not rout, do not surrender, do not accept defeat. They fight until they achieve victory or die trying, and often their stubborn faith proves the deciding factor in battles that rational analysis would deem already lost. Organization and life of faith. The Adepta Sororitas is organized with military precision, yet every aspect of its structure is infused with religious significance. From the grandest convent to the smallest mission, from the abbess who leads the entire sisterhood to the newest novitiate beginning her training, faith and duty intertwine inseparably. At the apex of the organization stands the abbess of the Adepta Sororitas, the supreme commander and spiritual leader of the entire sisterhood. This position holds such importance that the abbess is sometimes elected to join the High Lords of Terror themselves, giving the sisters direct representation in the Imperium's ruling council. However, the position currently sits vacant. The last abbess, Sister Sabrina of the Order of the Ermine Mantle, having disappeared during her pilgrimage to San Lior, the original homeworld of the Daughters of the Emperor. Below the abbess, the sisterhood is divided between two great convents. The convent prioris stands on Terra itself, humanity's cradle and throne world of the Emperor. The convent sanctorum is located on Ophelia 7, a cardinal world in Segmentum Tempestus. Each convent is led by a prioress, who commands all orders and sisters based there. The convents house multiple orders, each with distinct roles and responsibilities. The orders militant are the most visible and well-known, the warrior arm of the sisterhood. But they represent only one aspect of the sisters' service. The orders hospitaller provide medical care across the Imperium, their sisters serving as surgeons, physicians, and nurses on battlefields and in civilian hospitals alike. clad in white robes marked with the symbol of the healing chalice, they bring the emperor's mercy alongside his wrath. The order's dialogues serve as scholars, linguists, and translators. Thus, these sisters master countless languages and dialects, allowing them to communicate across the Imperium's vast linguistic diversity. They study ancient texts, seeking deeper understanding of the imperial creed. Some become experts in Xenos languages, their knowledge invaluable when the Imperium must communicate with alien species it has not yet destroyed. The Order's famulous work among the Imperium's nobility, serving as diplomats, chamberlains, and advisors to noble families. These sisters move in high society, watching for signs of corruption or heresy among the ruling class. They educate noble daughters in proper devotion to the emperor, arrange marriages that serve the Imperium's interests, and ensure that noble houses remain loyal to Terra. Within the Order's militant, organization follows a hierarchical structure. At the top stands the Canoness, a veteran warrior and inspirational leader. Canonesses are paragons of faith, their devotion and skill, making them living exemplars of everything the sisterhood represents. They lead their forces personally, their presence on the battlefield inspiring nearby sisters to greater acts of heroism. Below the Canoness, the Palatine serves as a trusted lieutenant and commander. These officers lead smaller forces, coordinating tactics and ensuring that the Canoness's strategic vision is executed properly. Palatines often specialize in particular aspects of warfare, their expertise complementing the Canoness's broader leadership. The basic unit of the Order's militant is the Battle Sisters Squad, typically numbering 10 warriors, led by a sister superior. These squads form the backbone of any sister's force, as their bolters and faith providing reliable, flexible combat capability. Within each squad, specialists carry heavy or special weapons, while one sister bears the sacred simulacrum imperialis, a holy banner that inspires nearby warriors and channels divine power. Specialized squads provide additional capability. Dominion squads emphasize special weapons and aggressive tactics, rushing forward to break enemy formations. Retributor squads carry heavy weapons, providing fire support from defensive positions. Celestian squads consist of veteran sisters, elite warriors chosen for their exceptional skill and devotion. These often serve as bodyguards for canonesses and other high-ranking sisters. The Seraphim represent the sisters' airborne assault capability, equipped with jump packs that carry them high above the battlefield. As these warriors descend like avenging angels, their twin pistols blazing. Seraphim are renowned for their grace and skill, their aerial maneuvers allowing them to strike where enemies least expect. A variant called the Zephyrim carries power weapons instead of pistols, specializing in close combat performed while airborne. Supporting these combat units are numerous specialists and characters. The Imagifier carries sacred relics and standards, her presence inspiring nearby sisters and channeling acts of faith. The Dialogus, when attached to combat units, can focus and enhance miracles through her deep understanding of the Imperial Creed. The Hospitalia provides medical support, her skills keeping sisters fighting who would otherwise succumb to their wounds. The Ministorum priest, though not technically a member of the Adepta Sororitas, frequently accompanies their forces. These fiery preachers inspire warriors through passionate sermons and fearless leadership, their conviction matching if not exceeding that of the sisters themselves. They are particularly effective when leading penitent units, their exhortations driving repentia and archoflagellants to greater fury. The sisters' organization extends beyond military structure to encompass all aspects of their lives. From the moment a girl is recruited into the sisterhood, every hour of every day is regimented, every action given religious significance. The day begins before dawn with prayers, the sisters gathering in their order's chapel to sing hymns and recite litanies. Morning prayers can last for hours, setting the spiritual tone for the day ahead. After prayer comes training, as even veteran sisters maintain rigorous training schedules, constantly honing their skills with bolter and blade. New novitiates spend most of their day in training, learning not just how to fight, but why they fight. The martial and spiritual education proceeding hand in hand. They study the Imperial Creed, memorizing its verses, internalizing its truths. They learn the histories of their order, the deeds of their martyrs, the legends of their saints. Weapons maintenance is itself a form of prayer. Sisters clean and bless their equipment with ritualistic precision, reciting devotional verses as they work. Every component of their armor is anointed with sacred oils. Every magazine of bolter shells receives blessing. This is not mere superstition. The sisters genuinely believe that properly maintained and blessed equipment fights better. And battlefield performance seems to validate this belief. Meals are taken in communal refectories, always preceded and followed by prayers of thanks. The food is simple, often barely adequate for the calories required by their intensive training and combat operations. Luxury and comfort are rejected as distractions from devotion. The sisters sleep in austere cells, their quarters furnished with nothing beyond the necessities. A hard bed, a place to store their armor and weapons, perhaps a small shrine where they can offer private prayers. When not actively training or praying, sisters engage in productive labor. They might work in the convent's manufactories, assisting in the production of ammunition or equipment. They might serve in the libraries and scriptoriums, copying sacred texts or maintaining records. Some assist the order's hospitaller in caring for the sick and wounded. Every task, no matter how mundane, is performed with devotion, seen as another form of service to the emperor. Advancement through the ranks is based on a combination of skill, faith, and service. A battle sister who consistently demonstrates exceptional ability and devotion might be elevated to Celestian, joining the elite veterans. A Celestian who shows leadership qualities might become a sister superior, given command of her own squad. A sister superior who proves herself in battle and demonstrates unwavering faith might eventually rise to Palatine, and from there perhaps even to Canoness. But rank carries not privilege, but responsibility. A Canoness does not enjoy greater comfort or luxury than the sisters she leads. Instead, she bears the weight of command. Yet the knowledge that her decisions will send sisters to their deaths, that her tactical choices determine whether worlds are saved or lost. This burden is accepted as another form of service, another way to demonstrate devotion to the emperor. The relationship between the Adeptus Sororitas and the ecclesiarchy is complex and sometimes fraught with tension. Technically, the sisters are part of the Adeptus Ministorum, subject to its authority. Cardinals and other church officials can request or even demand sisters' assistance. But the sisters maintain significant autonomy, particularly in matters of doctrine and deployment. A canoness might refuse a cardinal's request if she believes it conflicts with her order's mission or the emperor's will. This tension occasionally leads to conflict, but more often results in productive cooperation, where the ecclesiarchy provides funding, resources, and recruits. The sisters provide military power and zealous devotion to rooting out heresy. Cardinals rely on the sisters to enforce their edicts and protect religious sites. The sisters rely on the ecclesiarchy to maintain the spiritual infrastructure that sustains their faith. The relationship with the Inquisition, particularly the Ordo Hereticus, is more clearly defined. The sisters serve as the chamber militant of this branch of the Inquisition, meaning they are the go-to military force when an inquisitor needs soldiers to hunt witches and heretics. This relationship dates back to the formation of the modern Inquisition and has proven mutually beneficial. Inquisitors gain access to fanatically loyal, incorruptible warriors. The sisters gain the resources and authority to prosecute their wars against corruption across the galaxy. But this does not mean the sisters blindly follow every inquisitor's orders. Their loyalty is ultimately to the emperor, and if an inquisitor's commands seem to conflict with his will, the sisters are perfectly capable of refusing or even opposing them. Instances of sisters executing corrupt inquisitors exist in imperial records, though such events are rare and always controversial. The recruitment of new sisters begins in childhood. The Schola Progenium, the vast network of orphanages that raises the children of fallen imperial servants, provides most of the sisterhood's recruits. Young girls who demonstrate exceptional piety and physical capability are selected, their training beginning immediately. And others come from worlds where the adepta sororitas maintains a strong presence, daughters volunteered by faithful families who see service to the emperor as the highest honor their child could achieve. The training regime is brutal, designed to break the weak and forge the strong into instruments of the emperor's will. Physical conditioning begins at dawn and continues throughout the day. Young novitiates run obstacle courses while reciting prayers, their devotion tested as their bodies scream for rest. They learn to maintain their equipment in all conditions, to field strip a bolter in darkness, to recognize the signs of corruption and heresy in all their subtle forms. Combat training emphasizes discipline and faith working in concert. A novitiate learns to fire her bolter with mechanical precision, but she also learns the prayers that sanctify each shot, the hymns that steady her aim, the devotional verses that turn her weapon into an instrument of divine judgment. She studies close combat, learning to wield chainsword and power maul with deadly efficiency, but always within the context of serving the emperor through violence. Spiritual education proceeds alongside physical training. The novitiates memorize vast portions of the imperial creed, learn the histories of their order and the adepta sororitas as a whole, study the lives of saints and martyrs whose examples they must emulate. They learn to recognize the signs of chaos corruption, to identify Xeno's species on sight, to understand the various threats the Imperium faces, but most importantly, as they internalize the central truth of their existence, that they exist solely to serve the Emperor, that their lives have value only in his service, that death in his name is the greatest achievement any mortal can hope for. This indoctrination is total and absolute. By the time a novitiate becomes a full battle sister, typically after a decade or more of training, she has been so thoroughly conditioned that doubt is literally inconceivable. She does not question orders or doctrine. She does not wonder if there might be alternative approaches or philosophies. Her faith is as fundamental to her existence as breathing, as natural as her heartbeat. She believes, with every fiber of her being, that the Emperor is divine, that the Imperium is righteous, that her service is holy. The novitiates also learn the importance of sisterhood in its most literal sense. They train in squads that remain together throughout their education, forming bonds of loyalty and affection that will sustain them through the horrors of war. They learn to trust their sisters absolutely, to know that the warrior fighting beside them will never falter, never retreat, never abandon her post. This trust is essential, for in battle, sisters must function as a unified whole, their movements coordinated, their faith reinforcing each other. Different specializations require additional training. Those selected for the Seraphim must master the use of jump packs, learning to maneuver in 3 dimensions while maintaining accuracy with their pistols. This requires exceptional balance and spatial awareness, qualities that are tested repeatedly during training. Seraphim candidates spend hours in flight simulators, practice descending onto moving targets, learn to perform aerial combat maneuvers that would leave ordinary soldiers helpless and disoriented. Those chosen to become retributors undergo extensive training with heavy weapons. They learn the characteristics of each weapon in the sisters' arsenal, from the reliable heavy bolter to the devastating multi-melter. They practice target acquisition and fire discipline, learning when to conserve ammunition and when to unleash devastating volleys. Most importantly, they cultivate the patience and calm necessary to maintain accurate fire even under the most intense enemy bombardment. The retributor does not panic when shells explode around her. She adjusts her aim, recites her prayers, and continues firing. Dominion training emphasizes speed and aggression. These sisters learn to advance rapidly while maintaining accurate fire with special weapons. They practice breaching techniques, study enemy defensive positions, develop the tactical awareness necessary to identify and exploit weaknesses in enemy lines. The Dominion must be fearless. charging forward when more cautious warriors would seek cover, trusting that faith and speed will protect her where armor might fail. For those selected to join the elite Celestian ranks, training never truly ends. Even veterans with decades of combat experience continue to hone their skills, seeking perfection in service to the Emperor. Celestians often specialize in particular roles, becoming experts in urban warfare or void combat or counterinsurgency operations. They serve as examples to younger sisters, their skill and devotion inspiring those who follow in their footsteps. The Order's Hospitaller undergo very different training, though no less intensive. These sisters study medicine and surgery, learning to treat injuries that would kill ordinary patients. They learn to perform battlefield amputations, to treat laser burns and projectile wounds, to recognize and counteract dozens of poisons and toxins. But they also learn to comfort the dying, to provide spiritual solace alongside physical treatment, to see in suffering an opportunity for deeper faith. Hospitaller training includes extensive study of human anatomy and physiology, but always in the context of the Emperor's design. They learn that the human body is a temple, that healing it is a form of worship, that preserving life allows that life to continue serving the Emperor. They also learn the limits of their art, recognizing when a warrior's injuries are too severe for treatment, when the most merciful action is to grant the Emperor's peace through a swift and painless death. The Order's Dialogus receive education that would rival any scholar. They study languages, learning not just Gothic in its various forms, but also countless regional dialects and even Xeno's languages. They learn cryptography and code breaking, skills invaluable in intelligence gathering and counter-espionage work. They study history and culture, gaining deep understanding of the Imperium's vast diversity. But always, their learning is filtered through faith, every piece of knowledge evaluated for how it serves the Emperor's will. To the Orders. Famulus undergo perhaps the most subtle and complex training of all non-militant orders. These sisters must learn to move in high society without appearing out of place, to recognize social manipulation and political intrigue, to advise noble families without appearing to command them. They study etiquette and protocol, learn the genealogies of major noble houses, understand the complex web of alliances and rivalries that characterize imperial aristocracy. They become experts in soft power, influencing through suggestion and example rather than direct command. Throughout all this training, regardless of specialization, one principle remains constant: faith above all else. A sister might excel at marksmanship, surgery, linguistics, or diplomacy, but if her faith wavers, she has failed. As the sisterhood does not need merely skilled soldiers or competent administrators, it needs believers, warriors whose conviction in the Emperor's divinity is so absolute that it becomes a weapon in itself. The graduation of a novitiate to full battle sister status is marked by solemn ceremony. The young warrior kneels before her canoness, reciting oaths of loyalty and service. She is presented with her armor, each piece blessed as it is fitted to her body. She receives her bolter, the weapon sanctified through week-long rituals and inscribed with her name and the date of her elevation. She takes her place among her sisters, no longer a student but a warrior, ready to fight and die in the Emperor's name. But even this is not the end of education. Sisters continue to study throughout their service, attending regular theological instruction, reviewing tactical scenarios, learning from the experiences of their battles. The sisterhood recognizes that while faith is paramount, skill and knowledge remain valuable. A sister must understand her enemies to defeat them, must know the terrain where she fights, must constantly adapt her tactics to new threats and challenges. Stagnation is death, both spiritual and physical. The orders also maintain extensive libraries and archives, repositories of knowledge accumulated over 10 millennia. These contain not just religious texts, but also tactical manuals, after-action reports from thousands of campaigns, studies of xenospecies and chaos entities, medical treatises, linguistic references, and countless other resources. Sisters are encouraged to study these materials, to learn from the experiences of those who came before, to understand the patterns of war that recur across the centuries. Some sisters become scholars in their own right, spending decades researching particular subjects. They might specialize in the tactics of a specific Xenos race, becoming the sisterhood's foremost expert on fighting that enemy. They might study the history of their order, preserving the memories of battles and martyrs for future generations. They might delve into obscure theological questions, seeking deeper understanding of the imperial creed and the emperor's will. This combination of martial skill, spiritual devotion, and scholarly learning creates warriors who are far more than simple soldiers. They are theologian warriors, capable of debating doctrine with ecclesiarchs and destroying heretics with equal facility. They are examples of what baseline humanity can achieve through faith and discipline, proof that genetic enhancement is not necessary for extraordinary capability. The daily schedule of an active battle sister reflects this multifaceted nature. She rises before dawn for morning prayers, her voice joining the chorus of her sisters in hymns of devotion. After prayers comes physical training, hours of intensive exercise designed to maintain peak conditioning. Mid-morning brings weapons practice, the courtyard echoing with bolter fire as sisters drill endlessly to maintain their marksmanship. Afternoons might include tactical briefings, study sessions, equipment maintenance, or additional specialized training depending on the sister's role and current operational needs. Evenings bring more prayers, communal meals taken in silence or accompanied by readings from sacred texts, and perhaps brief periods of personal time before the lights are extinguished and the sisters retire to their austere cells. Even sleep serves a purpose, the sisters believing that dreams can carry messages from the emperor, visions that might guide their actions or warn of coming dangers. This regimented existence continues whether the sisters are actively deployed or residing in their convents and preceptories. There is no leave, no vacation, no retirement from service. A sister serves until she falls in battle or becomes too infirm to continue, at which point she typically joins one of the non-militant orders, continuing her service in different capacity. Some few sisters live to great age, their bodies failing, but their faith undiminished. And these venerable warriors are treasured as living connections to the past, sources of wisdom and experience for younger generations. The daily life of a battle sister is thus a constant cycle of prayer, training, and service. She rises before dawn to praise the emperor. She trains her body and mind to peak efficiency. She maintains her equipment with religious devotion. She studies the creed, seeking deeper understanding. She fights when called upon, giving everything, including her life if necessary. And through it all, she never doubts, never questions, never wavers in her conviction that this is the highest calling any human can achieve. This total dedication produces warriors of extraordinary quality. By the time a novitiate becomes a full battle sister, she has spent years, sometimes decades, in intensive training. She can field strip and maintain her bolter blindfolded. She can recite the Fade Imperialis from memory. She can fight in any environment against any foe, her faith sustaining her when physical endurance fails. She is, simply put, one of the finest warriors the Imperium can produce, her skill rivaling that of many enhanced fighters, despite being entirely baseline human. Conclusion. Faith's eternal vigil. In the grim darkness of the far future, where hope seems lost and darkness presses in from all sides, the Adepta Sororitas stand as proof that the human spirit, when fueled by absolute faith, can achieve the impossible. They are not genetically enhanced supermen or cybernetic killing machines. They are women, baseline humans, who through devotion and training have made themselves into warriors capable of standing against the galaxy's worst nightmares. The story of the Sisters of Battle is one of redemption through blood. Born from the treachery of the age of apostasy, transformed from the deceived brides of the Emperor into the righteous warriors of the Adepta Sororitas, they represent the Imperium's capacity for renewal even in its darkest hours. Alicia Dominica and her companions stood before the Golden Throne and emerged changed. their understanding of the Emperor's will transformed into absolute conviction. From this beginning, 6 great orders emerged, each embodying different aspects of faith and warfare. The Ebon Chalice maintains the orthodox traditions, yet their adherence to ancient doctrine, making them the standard by which all others are measured. Our martyred lady embraces sacrifice, their willingness to die for the Emperor making them fearsome in desperate situations. The Bloody Rose channels fury into a weapon, their rage burning away the Emperor's enemies with terrible efficiency. The Sacred Rose demonstrates that serenity can be as powerful as passion, their calm determination proving unbreakable. The Argent Shroud strikes with speed and surprise, appearing where needed most, and vanishing before enemies can respond. The Valorous Heart endures suffering that would break others, their resilience testimony to faith's power to sustain even in agony. Together, these orders and their countless smaller sister organizations wage war across the galaxy. They defend shrine worlds and cardinal planets. They purge heretical cults and witch covens. They hold the line against Xenos invasions and chaos incursions. They serve as the militant arm of the ecclesiarchy and the chamber militant of the Ordo Hereticus. Wherever faith is threatened, wherever corruption takes root, there the Sisters of Battle can be found, bringing the Emperor's judgment in the form of bolter shell and purifying flame. Their acts of faith demonstrate that devotion has power beyond mere psychology. When a sister calls upon her accumulated spiritual strength, reality itself bends to her conviction. Shots that should miss find their marks. Armor that should fail turns aside, killing blows. Warriors who should die rise again, granted one more chance to strike at the Emperor's foes. These are not tricks or technological advantages, but genuine miracles, proof that in the 41st millennium, faith is the most powerful weapon of all. The living saints who walk among them provide even more dramatic proof of divine favor. Saint Celestine, dying and resurrecting again and again, her existence a cycle of sacrifice and renewal, stands as a beacon of hope in the darkness. She demonstrates that the Emperor still acts in the galaxy, that he still fights for humanity, that death is not the end for those whose faith burns bright enough. Yet the Sisters' path is not one of glory alone. The existence of the Repentia, the Archoflagellants, the Penitent Engines, all remind us that this faith comes with terrible costs. Those who fail, who fall short of the sisterhood's impossible standards, face punishment that would break lesser souls. They are given opportunity to redeem themselves through suffering and violence, their agony transformed into a weapon against the Emperor's enemies. This is the darker side of absolute faith, the recognition that mercy has limits and failure demands penance. The Sisters' wars span millennia and encompass every corner of the galaxy. From the Palatine Crusade, where Saint Celestine first revealed herself, to the desperate defenses of the Indomitus Crusade, they have proven their worth time and again. They fight not because they are ordered to, but because they believe, with absolute conviction, that this is their purpose, their calling, their highest duty. And through that belief, they achieve victories that should be impossible. Their organization reflects this total devotion. But every aspect of a sister's life, from dawn prayers to evening training, from weapons maintenance to tactical planning, is infused with religious significance. They do not simply follow orders, they seek the Emperor's will in every decision. Their commanders do not merely direct troops, they lead through example and inspiration, their faith as important as their tactical acumen. As the Imperium faces its greatest crisis since the Horus heresy, torn in half by the Great Rift and beset by enemies on all sides, the Sisters of Battle continue their vigil. In the Imperium Nihilus, cut off from terror's light, they maintain their faith against impossible odds. In the Imperium Sanctus, they defend the Emperor's heartland from chaos incursions that would consume all. They do not despair at the darkness that surrounds them. Instead, they shine brighter, their faith like stars in the night. The future will bring new challenges, new horrors that humanity must face. The forces of chaos grow stronger with every passing year. Xenos empires encroach on human space from all directions. The Tyranids hunger endlessly, their hive fleets consuming world after world. The Necrons awaken from their long slumber, ancient technology making them nearly unstoppable. Against all these threats and more, the Imperium must stand or fall. And when humanity stands, when it refuses to yield despite impossible odds, the Sisters of Battle will be there. They will sing their hymns as they advance into enemy fire. They will recite their prayers as they pull the trigger. They will call upon their faith as they face down horrors that would drive lesser warriors mad. And through that faith, through that absolute conviction in the Emperor's divine protection and their own righteous purpose, they will prevail. This is the lesson of the Adepta Sororitas, the truth they prove on 1,000 battlefields every day. Faith has power. Not the wavering, uncertain faith of those who hope for the best while preparing for the worst. Not the calculated faith of those who hedge their bets and maintain escape routes. But absolute, total, unquestioning faith that accepts no compromise and recognizes no limits. In the grim darkness of the far future, where there is only war, the Sisters of Battle are the Emperor's daughters, clad in blessed armor and armed with holy weapons. They are the Adepta Sororitas, the most faithful warriors in all the galaxy. They ask no quarter and give none. They know no fear and accept no defeat. But they will fight until victory is achieved or death claims them, and either outcome serves the Emperor's will. Their battle cry echoes across the void, "The Emperor protects," and in their service, through their sacrifice, through their absolute and unshakable faith, he does. The galaxy may burn, the stars may die, the universe itself may end in fire and darkness, but as long as one sister stands, one voice raised in prayer, one finger on a trigger aimed at the Emperor's enemies, humanity's light will not be extinguished. The Adepta Sororitas stand eternal vigil, and they will not falter, not now, not ever. For they are the Emperor's chosen, the bearers of his light, the manifestation of his wrath. They are the Sisters of Battle, and in their faith lies humanity's salvation. In examining the Sisters of Battle, what we see reflected both the best and worst of the Imperium they serve. Their absolute devotion, their willingness to sacrifice everything for humanity's survival, their courage in the face of impossible odds, these represent the noble aspects of imperial civilization. But their intolerance, their brutal methods, their refusal to question or compromise, these demonstrate the darkness that pervades even humanity's defenders. Yet within the context of Warhammer 40,000's grim darkness, the Sisters of Battle make perfect sense. In a universe where chaos gods literally exist and feed on doubt and despair, where Xenos empires seek humanity's extinction, where heresy can doom entire worlds to demonic corruption, perhaps absolute faith is not fanaticism but necessity. Perhaps the Sisters' uncompromising nature, their willingness to burn away all doubt and question, serves a genuine protective function in a galaxy where skepticism can be a doorway to damnation. The Sisters also demonstrate that within the Imperium's oppressive structure, meaning and purpose can still be found. These are not conscripts forced into service against their will. They are believers who have chosen this path, who find fulfillment in service and devotion. Their lives are harsh by any standard, but they are also lives of purpose, of belonging to something greater than themselves. In the Sisters' absolute conviction, there is a kind of peace that the Imperium's more cynical servants can never know. Their example also matters beyond their direct military contributions. Across the Imperium, ordinary citizens see the Sisters of Battle and take heart. Here are women like themselves, not genetically enhanced supermen but baseline humans, standing against the galaxy's horrors through faith alone. If the Sisters can face down demons and Xenos, if their prayers can turn aside bullets and their devotion can work miracles, then perhaps there is hope for all humanity. Perhaps the Emperor truly does protect those who believe. This inspirational role may be as important as any battle they fight. The Imperium runs on faith, on the belief of its countless trillions that service and sacrifice matter, that the Emperor watches over his people, that humanity's suffering serves some higher purpose. The Sisters of Battle are living proof of these beliefs, walking testaments to faith's power. When they appear on a world facing crisis, they bring not just military force but hope, the assurance that the Imperium has not forgotten its people, that the Emperor's light still shines in the darkness. The Sisters also serve an important role in maintaining the imperial cult's purity. As the chamber militant of the Ordo Hereticus, they help enforce orthodox belief across the Imperium, rooting out heretical variations and ensuring that the imperial creed remains consistent. This can be brutal work, requiring the suppression or destruction of beliefs that, while faithful to the Emperor, deviate from approved doctrine. But the sisterhood sees this as necessary, understanding that unity of faith is essential when that faith protects against literal demonic corruption. Their relationship with the common people of the Imperium is complex. On one hand, they are revered figures, holy warriors whose appearance brings hope and inspiration. On the other hand, they are also feared, for the Sisters show no mercy to heretics, and their definition of heresy can be broad. A world that rejoices at their arrival to defend against Xenos invasion might tremble when they begin investigating the population for signs of corruption, their purges as deadly to the unfaithful as any enemy army. But this duality is itself instructive. The Sisters of Battle are not simply heroes or villains. They are products of their culture, shaped by the Imperium's harsh realities and the genuine threats it faces. They do terrible things, but often in service of preventing even greater horrors. They show no mercy because they have learned, through 10,000 years of experience, that mercy toward the corrupt endangers the innocent. Whilst their worldview is stark and uncompromising because anything less has proven insufficient. Looking to the future, the role of the Adepta Sororitas seems likely to only grow in importance. The Great Rift has severed the Imperium in two, creating vast regions where traditional military forces struggle to maintain presence. But the Sisters, sustained by faith rather than supply lines, can operate in these regions more effectively than most imperial forces. Their very existence becomes a weapon against despair, their miracles proving that the Emperor still acts even in the darkest corners of the galaxy. The return of Primarch Guilliman has also affected the Sisterhood, though perhaps less dramatically than other imperial institutions. Guilliman, for all his brilliance as a strategist and administrator, but remains uncomfortable with the imperial cult's more extreme manifestations. He sees the Imperium's religious fanaticism as a deviation from his father's original vision, a corruption of imperial truth into imperial faith. Yet he cannot deny the power that faith generates, the miracles the Sisters perform, the effectiveness of their devotion-driven warfare. This tension between Guilliman's rationalism and the Sisters' faith-based approach represents a broader conflict within the Imperium, a question about humanity's future direction. Will the Imperium embrace reason and pragmatism, as Guilliman advocates, or will it delve even deeper into faith and religious fervor, as the ecclesiarchy desires? The Sisters of Battle stand firmly on the side of faith, their very existence, an argument that devotion, not reason, is humanity's greatest weapon. But perhaps this is a false dichotomy. Perhaps the Sisters demonstrate that faith and effectiveness need not be opposed. Their devotion does not make them foolish or incompetent. If anything, their faith enhances their military capability, their absolute conviction translating into superior performance. They are not simply zealots, but highly trained, tactically sophisticated warriors whose belief system happens to generate measurable supernatural effects. In this sense, the Sisters of Battle might represent an ideal synthesis of the spiritual and practical. They believe absolutely in the Emperor's divinity, yet they also train extensively in martial skills. They see miracles as divine intervention, yet they also maintain their equipment with meticulous care. They trust in faith to protect them, yet they also employ sound tactical doctrine, This combination makes them extraordinarily effective, perhaps even necessary in a universe where both material and spiritual threats are equally real. The sisters also raise interesting questions about the nature of faith itself in the Warhammer 40,000 universe. Is their power purely psychic, a manifestation of the warp shaped by collective belief? Or is there something more, a genuine divine force acting through them? The Imperium would say the latter, that the Emperor himself channels his power through his most faithful servants. The rational might argue the former, that the sisters are unknowingly wielding psychic power through shared conviction. But perhaps both are true, or perhaps the distinction matters less than the results. What is undeniable is that the Adepta Sororitas work, while they win battles that should be lost. They survive situations that should be fatal. They perform feats that defy explanation through purely material means. Whether one calls this faith or psychic phenomenon or divine intervention, the effect remains the same. In the hands of the Sisters of Battle, absolute belief becomes absolute power, conviction manifests as miracles, and devotion transcends death itself. And so they continue their eternal vigil, standing watch over humanity's future in an age of unprecedented darkness. They march into battle, singing hymns, their voices raised in defiance of the horrors that surround them. They pull triggers and swing blades, each act of violence a prayer, each enemy slain an offering to the Emperor. They die and are reborn through faith. Their resurrection's proof that death is not the end for those who truly believe. They are the Adepta Sororitas, the Sisters of Battle, the Emperor's daughters. They ask nothing for themselves and give everything in his name. They know no fear because their faith is absolute. They accept no defeat because victory or martyrdom both serve his will. They are humanity's defenders, standing between civilization and chaos. Their faith, the only light in an encroaching darkness. In the grim darkness of the far future, where there is only war, the Sisters of Battle prove that even in the worst of times, faith endures. Not the weak faith of those who hope for better days, but the adamantine faith of those who create better days through their actions. Not the passive faith of those who pray and wait, but the active faith of those who pray and fight. Their devotion made manifest in bolter shells and flamer bursts and chainsaw strikes. As long as the Sisters of Battle stand, as long as their voices rise in hymns of devotion, as long as their faith burns bright enough to work miracles on the battlefield, humanity has a chance. The odds may be impossible, the enemies insurmountable, the future uncertain. But faith, as the sisters prove daily, is its own kind of certainty, its own form of victory. And in that certainty lies humanity's best hope for survival in a galaxy determined to destroy it. If you enjoyed this deep exploration into the lore of the Adepta Sororitas, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more Warhammer 40k content. The Emperor protects.
I hope you guys enjoyed the story. Make sure to hit the subscribe, like, share button, whatever you want. Give me some feedback if there's any. And yeah, sleep well.